52. Take a moment and let that number settle, because it is not an accident and it is not decoration. 52 is the number of weeks in a year. 52 is the number of times the earth will turn through a full 7-day cycle between this moment and the same moment next year. 52 is how many Mondays you will wake up to, how many Fridays you will exhale into, how many fresh starts and quiet endings will be handed to you over the course of the next 12 months of your one and only life. And 52 is the number of ancient sayings we are going to walk through together in this teaching, one for every single week of the year ahead of you. Each one a small hinge on which an enormous door can swing, each one a compact and unbreakable piece of wisdom carved out of 3,000 years of human experience and divine revelation, each one capable of quietly and permanently rewiring the way you make decisions and the way you build the entire architecture of your life. Because here is what almost no one tells you: your life is not primarily the product of your dramatic moments. It is not built out of the handful of enormous decisions you imagine define you, the job you took, the person you married, the city you moved to, the risk you did or did not take. Those matter, of course they matter, but the actual shape of your life, the texture of your days, the person you slowly become, the reputation that follows you into every room, the peace or the turmoil you carry in your chest when you lie down at night. All of that is built out of thousands of small, almost invisible decisions: the word you chose to say or swallow, the impulse you followed or resisted, the friend you kept or released, the anger you fed or starved, the dollar you spent or saved, the truth you told or shaded. These are the bricks. And wisdom is the difference between building a house that stands and building a house that collapses the first time the wind rises against it. The Book of Proverbs, which is where all 52 of these sayings come from, understood this with a clarity that the modern world has almost entirely lost. It is a book obsessed not with the spectacular, but with the daily. It has almost nothing to say about mountaintop religious experiences, and almost everything to say about how you handle your money, your mouth, your temper, your friendships, your work, your appetites, and your reactions when someone wrongs you. It is the most practical book in the entire Bible, and possibly the most practical book ever written by human hands, precisely because it refuses to let you escape into the abstract. It drags wisdom down out of the clouds and puts it to work in your kitchen, and your workplace, and your marriage, and your bank account, and the private theater of your own thoughts. And the promise of this book, stated plainly, right at its opening, is not that it will make you religious. The promise is that it will make you wise, that it will give you, in the words of its own introduction, prudence to the simple, and to the young man, knowledge and discretion. That a wise man will hear and will increase learning, and a man of understanding shall attain unto wise counsels. This is a book that promises to upgrade the operating system running underneath every choice you make. Not to give you a list of rules to follow, but to change the kind of person you are so that the right choices begin to flow out of you the way water flows downhill, naturally, consistently, almost without effort, because your inner nature has been reshaped. That is what we are going to pursue together in this teaching, not information, transformation. We are going to take 52 of the sharpest, deepest, most life-altering sayings in the Book of Proverbs, and we are going to sit with each one long enough to let it do its work, to let it get past the surface of your intellect and down into the place where your actual decisions are made. And if you receive them the way they were meant to be received, not as ancient trivia, but as living instruction, you will not walk away from this the same person who started it. You will walk away with a mind that has begun, quietly and permanently, to rewire itself toward wisdom. So before we begin, I want to speak to you directly, the specific person listening to this right now. I do not know your name. I do not know what room you are sitting in, what has happened in your life this week, what decision is weighing on you even as you press play. But I know that you did not arrive here by accident. Something in you is hungry for a better way to live, a wiser way, a steadier way, a way of making decisions that you will not regret when you look back on them years from now. And I want you to know that this hunger is one of the best things about you. The Book of Proverbs would call it the beginning of wisdom. The very fact that you are here, seeking, listening, wanting to grow, that is already the first proverb coming true in your life before we have even reached it. Let me ask you for one small thing before we go further into this, and it is the only thing I am going to ask of you in this way, because I want your attention on the teaching and not on a list of requests. If this channel has ever been a place where you found something steady to hold on to, would you subscribe? That is the one ask. It is completely free. It costs you nothing, not a single cent, not even 30 seconds of your time. Just tap the subscribe button beneath this video, and that is all it takes. Here is why I ask. New teachings like this one go out from this channel every week. And if you drift away without subscribing, the next one will come, and you simply will not be here for it. It will pass you by in the noise of everything else competing for your attention, and you will lose the thread. Subscribing is how you keep your seat. It is how you make sure that every week, when the next piece of wisdom is ready, it finds its way back to you. Think of it as a steady place to return to, a quiet room that is always here when the world gets loud. That is all. Tap subscribe and let's keep going. And while you are there, let me invite you to do one small thing in the comments, because part of what makes this a community and not just a broadcast is that you are actually here, actually present. So drop a single word, just one, for what you are carrying into this teaching today. The weight you are hoping to set down over the next stretch of time we spend together. It might be anxiety, it might be money, it might be anger or grief or decisions or simply tired. One word, leave it below, and as you scroll you will see the words of others appearing beside yours, and you will realize you are not carrying it alone. Now, let us begin. Before we reach the first of our 52 sayings, we need to understand the strange and beautiful architecture of the book they come from, because it changes everything about how you hear them. The Book of Proverbs is largely associated with one name, Solomon, and the story of Solomon is one of the most instructive stories in all of Scripture, precisely because it is a story about wisdom that begins in glory and ends in warning. When Solomon became king of Israel following his father David, he was young and overwhelmed by the sheer size of what had been handed to him. And God appeared to him in a dream and made him an offer that has echoed down through 3,000 years of human longing. Ask what I shall give thee, anything, a blank check from the God of the universe. And Solomon, who could have asked for wealth, for long life, for the death of his enemies, for military triumph, asked instead for one thing. He asked for wisdom. He asked for an understanding heart to judge the people, to discern between good and bad. And God was so pleased with this request that he granted it in overflowing measure and then added everything else Solomon had not asked for on top of it. The result was a king whose wisdom became legendary across the entire ancient world. Rulers traveled from distant lands simply to hear him speak. The Queen of Sheba came, and after listening to him, said that the half had not been told her, and out of this God-given wisdom flowed the sayings, thousands of them, that would eventually be collected into the book we are studying today. But here is the part that gives the book its weight and its warning. Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived, did not finish well. In the end, he let his heart be turned. He accumulated wealth and wives and alliances and comforts, until the very wisdom he had been given was drowned out by the appetites he refused to discipline. And so the Book of Proverbs comes to us not as the boast of a man who mastered life, but as the hard-won testimony of a man who knew exactly what wisdom was, could describe it more beautifully than anyone in history, and still had to watch himself drift from it when he stopped living what he knew. That is why this book matters so much for you and me, because it is not enough to know wisdom. You have to live it daily in the small decisions, or it will not save you. Knowing is not the same as doing, and the tragedy of a wise man who stops walking in wisdom is one of the loudest warnings in all of Scripture. So as we go through these 52 sayings, I want you to hear them not as facts to collect, but as paths to walk. Each one is an invitation to actually do something differently, starting today in the actual circumstances of your actual life. Now, with all of that understood, let us open the treasury and take out the first of our 52 sayings. Proverb 1. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Proverbs 1:7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. We begin here because the book itself begins here, and it does so deliberately. This is the foundation stone. Everything else in the book, all 66 chapters of wisdom about money and speech and work and relationships, is built on top of this single sentence. And if you misunderstand this one, you will misunderstand all the rest. So let us slow down and get it right. The phrase that trips almost everyone is the fear of the Lord. In our modern ears, fear means terror. It means the emotion you feel when a car swerves toward you, when a doctor lowers his voice, when footsteps follow you down an empty street. And so people read this verse and imagine a God who wants you cowering, a God whose primary tool is intimidation, a God you approach the way a servant approaches a cruel and unpredictable master. But that is not what this word means, and that misunderstanding has done enormous damage to people's ability to know God. The fear spoken of here is not the terror of a slave. It is the reverence of a son. It is the awe you feel standing at the edge of the ocean, or beneath a sky exploding with more stars than you can count, or in the presence of something so much larger and older and more powerful than you that your own smallness becomes suddenly, cleanly obvious. It is the recognition that you are not the center of the universe, that there is a reality vastly greater than you, that you did not create and cannot control, and that you would be wise to align yourself with rather than defy. And notice what the verse claims about this reverence. It is the beginning of knowledge, not the enemy of knowledge, the beginning of it, the starting point, the doorway. This is a profound claim, and it cuts directly against one of the deepest assumptions of the modern mind, which tends to believe that reverence and intelligence are opposites, that the truly smart person has outgrown awe, that sophistication means standing above everything with an ironic detachment and bowing to nothing. Proverbs says the exact reverse. It says that all real knowledge begins with the humility to recognize that you are not God, that the person who thinks he knows everything has actually disqualified himself from learning anything, because learning requires first admitting that you do not already know. The fear of the Lord is simply the deepest and most accurate form of that admission. It is the posture of a mind that has understood its own limits and has therefore become teachable. And here is why this is the first and most important rewiring of how you make decisions. Every decision you make flows out of what you are ultimately bowing to. If you are bowing to your own appetites, your decisions will serve your appetites. If you are bowing to the approval of other people, your decisions will chase their applause. If you are bowing to fear, your decisions will be defensive and small. But if the deepest orientation of your heart is reverence toward the God who made you and knows you and set the world in motion, if that is the thing you are ultimately answering to, then every decision gets measured against a standard that will not shift with your moods or the crowd's opinion. You gain a fixed point, and a fixed point is the one thing you absolutely must have in order to navigate anything. A sailor without a fixed star is lost no matter how skilled he is. The fear of the Lord is the fixed star. It is the thing that makes every other kind of wisdom possible because it gives you something steady to steer by. Begin here, and everything else has a foundation. Skip this, and everything else is built on sand. Proverb 2, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. If the first proverb gave us the foundation, this one gives us the daily practice built upon it, and it is almost certainly the most beloved and most quoted passage in the entire book. Millions of people have leaned on these words in the hardest seasons of their lives, and for good reason, because they address the single most exhausting problem of human existence, the problem of not being able to see the future while still having to make decisions in the present. Look closely at the structure of what is being said, because it is more sophisticated than it first appears. There is a positive command and a negative command, held in deliberate tension. The positive, trust in the Lord with all your heart. The negative, lean not unto your own understanding. And the reason both are necessary is that human beings have a powerful tendency to do one without the other. We say we trust God, and then we quietly lean the entire weight of our decisions on our own limited, anxious, incomplete understanding of the situation. We pray about a decision for 30 seconds and then spend 30 hours running the calculations ourselves, exactly as if the prayer had never happened. The proverb is calling out this exact hypocrisy. It is saying that real trust is not merely adding God to the top of a decision you have already made in your own strength. Real trust means actively refusing to make your own understanding the final authority. Now, this is widely misunderstood, so let me be precise about what it does not mean. It does not mean throwing your brain in the trash. It does not mean refusing to think, refusing to plan, refusing to gather information, refusing to use the mind God gave you. The same Book of Proverbs relentlessly praises careful thought, planning, and the gathering of counsel. So lean not unto thine own understanding cannot mean do not use your understanding. What it means is, do not lean the whole weight of your life on it. Do not treat your own perspective as if it were complete, when in fact you can see only a sliver of the whole picture. You cannot see the future. You cannot see the hearts of the other people involved. You cannot see the 10,000 consequences rippling out from any given choice. Your understanding is real, but it is partial. And to lean your entire weight on something partial is to guarantee eventual collapse. And then comes the promise, and it is one of the most practical promises in all of Scripture for anyone facing a decision. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Notice the word all. Not in your religious ways, not in your spiritual ways. In all your ways. The choice about the job, the choice about the relationship, the choice about the money, the choice about how to respond to the difficult person, the ordinary, unglamorous, practical ways in which your life is actually built. Acknowledge him in those. Bring him into the actual decision. Hold the choice up before him honestly. Ask genuinely for direction, rather than just for a rubber stamp on what you have already decided. And the promise is that he will direct your paths. He will guide the outcome. He will shape the road ahead of you in ways you cannot engineer for yourself. The rewiring here is enormous. Most people make decisions from a posture of frantic control, trying to grip every variable, terrified of getting it wrong, exhausted by the impossible task of trying to see a future that no human can see. This proverb offers a completely different posture. The posture of trust, in which you do your genuine part. You think, you plan, you seek counsel, but you release the outcome to the one who can actually see the whole board. And the strange, counterintuitive result is that this makes you a better decision maker, not a lazier one, because you are no longer paralyzed by the impossible demand to be omniscient. You do your part with excellence, and you trust him with the rest. That is a lighter and wiser way to live. Proverb 3. Guard your heart above all else. Proverbs 4:23. Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. Here we come to one of the most psychologically penetrating sentences ever written, and once you truly see it, you cannot unsee it. It reorganizes your understanding of your entire inner life. Keep thy heart. Guard it, protect it, watch over it, stand sentry at its gates, with all diligence, not casually, not occasionally, with all diligence, which means with maximum attention, as the single most important guarding job you have. And the reason given is the key that unlocks everything, for out of it are the issues of life. Out of the heart flow the issues, the outcomes, the streams, the consequences of your entire life. The ancient Hebrew concept of the heart was not merely the seat of emotion, the way we tend to use the word today. The heart was the control center of the whole person, the place where thoughts, desires, decisions, and direction all originated. It was the operating system, and this proverb is making a claim about causation that runs completely against the way most people live. Most people live as though life happens to them from the outside in, as though their circumstances, their environment, other people's actions, and random luck are the primary forces shaping their existence. And so they spend enormous energy trying to control the outside, trying to arrange circumstances, manage other people, and engineer external outcomes, while paying almost no attention to what is happening on the inside. Proverbs says they have it exactly backwards. It says that life flows from the inside out, that the true source of the shape of your life is not your circumstances, but your heart, what you allow to live there, what you feed, what you protect, what you permit to take root. The bitterness you nurse in private eventually leaks out into every relationship you have. The envy you let grow quietly eventually distorts every decision you make. The lust you feed in secret eventually reorganizes your priorities. The gratitude you cultivate eventually radiates into everything you touch. What is in the well is what comes up in the bucket. Guard the heart, and you guard the source. Neglect the heart, and no amount of external management will save you, because the poison is coming from within. This is why guarding your heart is presented as the most diligent work you will ever do, because everyone else can see your behavior, but only you and God can see your heart, which means only you can guard it. No one else can do this job for you. And the guarding is active, not passive. It means being deliberate about what you let in, what you watch, what you read, who you listen to, what conversations you marinate in, what resentments you rehearse. It means being deliberate about what you let grow, pulling the weeds of bitterness and envy while they are still small before their roots go deep. It means noticing what is taking up residence in the control center of your life and asking honestly whether you want that thing directing your decisions, because it will direct them. Out of the heart are the issues of life. Whatever you let live there will eventually run the whole house. Proverb 4. The value of wisdom above riches. Proverbs 3:13-15. Happy is the man that findeth wisdom, and the man that getteth understanding. For the merchandise of it is better than the merchandise of silver, and the gain thereof than fine gold. She is more precious than rubies, and all the things thou canst desire are not to be compared unto her. We live in a world that has a very clear and very loud answer to the question of what you should pursue with your life, and that answer is money, wealth, financial success. The world measures a life by its net worth, ranks people by their bank accounts, and treats the accumulation of riches as the obvious and unquestioned goal of a well-lived life. And into that world, this proverb speaks a quiet, radical, world-inverting claim. It says that there is something worth more than silver, worth more than fine gold, more precious than rubies, and that thing is wisdom. Not because money is evil, and not because Proverbs is against wealth. The book has a great deal to say, much of it positive, about diligence and provision and the honest accumulation of resources. The point is one of ranking. of what sits on the throne of your desires, of what you would trade for what. Here is a way to test whether you actually believe this proverb. Imagine you were offered a large sum of money, enough to change your circumstances significantly, but accepting it would require you to become a more foolish person. It would require you to lose some of your discernment, your self-control, your ability to judge well, your capacity to see a situation clearly. Would you take the trade? Most people, if they answer honestly, feel an immediate resistance to the idea of becoming a fool, even for money. And that resistance is this proverb already living inside them. Because deep down, everyone knows that wisdom is the thing that determines whether money helps you or destroys you. A fool with a fortune is a tragedy waiting to happen. The lottery winners who end up bankrupt and miserable. The heirs who waste every advantage. The powerful who self-destruct. A wise person with very little, on the other hand, tends to build steadily, decide well, and construct a life that stands. Wisdom is the multiplier. It is the thing that determines what everything else in your life will amount to. That is why the proverb calls the one who finds wisdom happy, or in the fuller sense of the original word, deeply blessed, flourishing, well. Because wisdom is not just one more asset to add to the pile. It is the asset that governs all the other assets. It tells you when to spend and when to save, when to speak and when to stay silent, whom to trust and whom to keep at a distance, which opportunities to seize and which to let pass. Money can buy you options, but only wisdom can tell you which option to choose. And 1,000 options in the hands of a fool will produce 1,000 disasters, while a single option in the hands of a wise person can be turned into a flourishing life. Seek wisdom first. Rank it above the gold. And you will find that everything else you have finds its proper place. Proverb 5. A soft answer turns away wrath. Proverbs 15:1. A soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. Now we move from the grand foundations into the practical machinery of daily life, and few proverbs are more immediately, testably useful than this one. You can prove it true or false this very day in your next tense conversation. A soft answer turns away wrath. Grievous words, harsh words, cutting words, escalating words stir up anger. This is a proverb about the physics of conflict, and it describes a law as reliable as gravity. Think about the last time you were in an argument that spiraled out of control. Trace it backward in your memory. Almost always, you will find that the escalation happened through a series of responses, each one a little sharper than the last. One person says something with an edge. The other person, feeling the edge, responds with a slightly sharper edge to defend themselves. The first person, now feeling attacked, sharpens further, and within a few exchanges, two people who may have started only mildly annoyed are now furious, saying things they will regret, wounding each other in ways that will take days or weeks or years to heal. The escalation was not caused by the original issue. It was caused by the responses. Each grievous word stirred up more anger, exactly as the proverb says. Now imagine the same conversation with one difference. At the moment when the edge appears, one person chooses a soft answer, not a weak answer. This is crucial, and it is where people misunderstand the proverb. A soft answer is not surrender, and it is not dishonesty, and it is not pretending you have no position. A soft answer is a response delivered without the sharp edge, without the counterattack, without the need to wound in return. It might still say something firm. It might still hold a boundary, but it does so in a tone that does not add fuel to the fire. And when one person consistently refuses to add fuel, something remarkable happens. The fire has nothing to burn. The wrath turns away, not because the soft answer was passive, but because it broke the escalation cycle that anger depends on to grow. This is one of the most powerful tools you will ever possess for building a good life, because so much of the damage in human relationships comes not from the original disagreements, but from the way we handle them. The soft answer is a decision you make in the half second before you respond. The decision not to match the heat, not to defend by attacking, not to win the exchange at the cost of the relationship. It requires enormous self-control, which is why it is so rare and so valuable. But the person who masters it becomes almost unbeatable in the arena of human relationships because they cannot be dragged into the destructive spiral. They hold the peace not by having no strength, but by having the far greater strength required to keep their own tone soft while everything in them wants to sharpen it. Learn this one proverb, practice it in your next conflict, and you will watch relationships that used to explode begin instead to cool and heal. Proverbs 6. Pride goes before destruction. Proverbs 16:18. Pride goeth before destruction, and an haughty spirit before a fall. There is a reason this proverb has passed into common speech, quoted by people who have never opened a Bible, because it describes a pattern so universal that everyone eventually witnesses it, and most of us eventually live it. Pride goes before destruction. A haughty spirit, an arrogant, inflated, self-important spirit, goes before a fall. The order matters. The pride comes first, and the destruction follows. The pride is the cause, the fall is the effect. And the reason this pattern is so reliable is worth understanding deeply, because understanding it is the only real protection against it. Pride destroys you by blinding you. That is the mechanism. The proud person cannot see clearly because pride distorts perception in a very specific way. It makes you overestimate yourself and underestimate everything that could threaten you. The proud person does not think he needs to prepare because he assumes he is already good enough. He does not think he needs to listen because he assumes he already knows. He does not think he needs to guard against danger because he assumes he is too strong, too smart, too special to fall. And so he walks confidently toward the exact edge he cannot see because his pride has removed the very caution that would have saved him. This is why the fall so often comes at the peak of success, because success feeds pride and pride removes the vigilance. And the moment the vigilance is gone, the collapse begins. Watch how this plays out in real lives, and you will see it everywhere. The business that dominates its market and grows arrogant and stops innovating and is destroyed by a competitor, it did not take seriously. The athlete at the top of the game who stops training as hard because he believes his talent is enough and is overtaken by someone hungrier. The person in the strong marriage who grows complacent and careless because they assume the relationship is unbreakable and wakes up one day to find it broken. In every case, the destruction did not come out of nowhere. It was preceded by pride, by the quiet, comfortable assumption that the normal rules of caution and effort and humility no longer applied to them because of how well they were doing. The rewiring here is to treat your own success as the moment of maximum danger rather than the moment you can finally relax. This is deeply counterintuitive, which is exactly why so few people do it. When things are going badly, we are humble and vigilant by necessity. But when things are going well, we must choose to remain humble and vigilant against every instinct that tells us we have earned the right to coast. The wise person builds a habit of asking precisely in the moments of greatest success, where am I becoming arrogant? What am I no longer bothering to guard? What caution have I abandoned because I feel invincible? That question is the antidote. It reintroduces the vigilance that pride removes, and the person who keeps asking it, especially at the peak, is the person who does not fall. Proverbs 7. Iron sharpens iron. Proverbs 27:17. Iron sharpeneth iron, so a man sharpeneth the countenance of his friend. We come now to one of the most important decisions you will ever make, though most people never consciously make it at all. The decision of who you allow close to you. This proverb captures a truth that will shape your entire life, and it does so with a single vivid image. Iron sharpens iron. When one blade is drawn against another, both are made sharper. The friction, the resistance, the grinding contact, these are not damage. They are the very process by which each blade becomes more effective, more honed, more capable of doing what a blade is meant to do. And so the proverb says, one person sharpens another. The right relationships do not merely comfort you, they sharpen you. They make you better than you would have been alone. Notice, first, that sharpening requires friction. This is a truth our comfort-obsessed age desperately needs to hear. We tend to want relationships that are entirely soft, entirely affirming, entirely free of challenge. Friends who only ever agree with us, who never push back, who tell us we are right no matter what we do. But iron is not sharpened by a pillow. It is sharpened by another iron, by contact hard enough to remove what needs to be removed. The friends who sharpen you are not the ones who flatter you. They are the ones who love you enough to tell you the truth, to challenge your excuses, to notice when you are drifting, to say the hard thing you do not want to hear but need to. That kind of friendship involves friction. And the wisdom of this proverb is to recognize that the friction is a feature, not a flaw. That the relationships which occasionally make you uncomfortable by holding you to a higher standard are precisely the relationships making you sharper. But notice, second, and just as importantly, that iron sharpens iron. Not iron and wood, not iron and clay. For sharpening to happen, both parties must be iron. Both must have substance, strength, and a genuine commitment to becoming better. This is why the choice of your closest companions is one of the most consequential decisions of your entire life. You will become like the people you spend the most time with. Their standards will become your standards. Their assumptions will become your assumptions. Their level of ambition, integrity, discipline, and character will slowly, imperceptibly become yours, because prolonged proximity produces resemblance. If you surround yourself with people of low character, their lowness will grind against you and over time dull you down to their level. If you surround yourself with people of high character, of genuine wisdom and integrity and drive, their sharpness will grind against you and over time sharpen you up to theirs. So here is a decision worth making deliberately today, rather than by accident over years. Look honestly at the people closest to you, the ones whose influence actually shapes your daily life. Are they iron? Are they sharpening you, calling you upward, making you better? Or are they slowly dulling you, dragging your standards down, making you smaller? You do not have to abandon anyone cruelly, but you do get to choose who you draw close and who you keep at a respectful distance, and that choice, made wisely, will do more to shape the person you become than almost any other decision available to you. Choose iron. Let yourself be sharpened, and be iron for someone else in return. Proverb 8. The prudent see danger and take refuge. Proverbs 22:3. A prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. This proverb draws a line between two kinds of people, and the line it draws is the line between wisdom and folly in one of its most practical forms. The ability to see trouble coming and do something about it before it arrives. The prudent man foresees the evil. He sees the danger approaching while it is still at a distance, and hides himself, takes shelter, prepares, gets out of the way. The simple, by contrast, pass on. They keep walking straight ahead, oblivious, unprepared, and are punished by the very trouble they could have avoided if they had only been paying attention. The difference between these two people is not intelligence in the raw sense. It is not that the prudent man is smarter. The difference is foresight, the willingness to look ahead, to anticipate consequences, to imagine the future and prepare for it rather than being perpetually ambushed by it. And this willingness is one of the most learnable and most valuable skills in all of life, because so much of the suffering people endure is not the unavoidable kind, but the foreseeable kind. The financial crisis that could have been prevented by a small emergency fund built up during the good times. The health collapse that was signaled by years of warning signs that were ignored. The relationship breakdown that everyone but the couple could see coming for years. The career catastrophe that followed a pattern of choices anyone paying attention could have predicted. In case after case, the trouble did not come out of nowhere. It came from far off, visible to anyone who was willing to look ahead. The prudent looked and prepared and were spared. The simple did not look and walked straight into it. Now there is a crucial balance to strike here, because foresight can curdle into anxiety if it is not held rightly. This proverb is not telling you to live in a state of constant dread, obsessively scanning the horizon for every possible catastrophe, paralyzed by fear of everything that could go wrong. That is not prudence. That is anxiety, and it is its own kind of misery. The prudence described here is calm, not fearful. It looks ahead clearly, notices the genuine dangers, takes reasonable and practical steps to prepare, and then rests precisely because it has prepared. The prudent person builds the emergency fund and then stops worrying about money because they have done what wisdom required. They address the warning signs and then live in peace because they took action instead of ignoring it. Prudence, done rightly, actually produces more peace than folly, because folly's peace is an illusion that shatters the moment trouble arrives, while prudence's peace is real, built on the solid ground of genuine preparation. The rewiring here is to build a habit of asking, before every significant decision and periodically about your life as a whole, what trouble might be coming, and what small thing could I do now to prepare for it? Not obsessively, not fearfully, just wisely, the way a good captain checks the weather before sailing, not because he expects a storm, but because he would rather know. This single habit, looking ahead and taking reasonable precaution, will spare you an enormous amount of the suffering that ambushes the people who never bother to look. Proverb 9. Commit your work to the Lord. Proverbs 16:3. Commit thy works unto the Lord, and thy thoughts shall be established. Here is a proverb about the relationship between action and outcome, and it addresses one of the most common sources of anxiety in modern life: the desperate, exhausting attempt to control results that are ultimately not fully within our control. Commit thy works unto the Lord. Entrust your efforts, your projects, your labors, your plans to him, and thy thoughts shall be established. Your plans will be made firm. Your mind will find stability. There is a direct connection here between the act of committing your work to God and the experience of having a settled, stable, established mind. To understand why this works, you have to understand the anatomy of the anxiety that plagues ambitious people. When you care deeply about an outcome, a project at work, a business you are building, a goal you are chasing, a hope you have invested yourself in, your mind becomes consumed with trying to guarantee the result. But the result is never fully in your control. You can control your effort, your preparation, your diligence, your integrity, but you cannot control the market, the timing, the decisions of other people, the countless external factors that determine whether your best effort actually succeeds. And so your mind, trying to control something it cannot control, spins endlessly, replaying scenarios, chasing reassurance it can never quite catch, exhausting itself in the impossible task of guaranteeing an outcome that depends on 1,000 things beyond its reach. That is the unestablished mind, the mind that cannot settle because it is straining toward a control it will never possess. The proverb offers a way out that is neither passivity nor false confidence. It says, commit the work to the Lord. Do your part with excellence. The effort, the preparation, the integrity are all yours to give, and you must give them fully. But the outcome, which was never yours to control anyway, you deliberately hand over to God. You release it. You say, in effect, I have done my genuine part. I have worked with diligence and integrity, and now the result, which I could never fully control regardless, I place in the hands of the one who can see and govern all the factors I cannot. And in that act of committing, of entrusting, of releasing the outcome, something happens to your mind. It settles. Your thoughts are established, because the mind is only unstable while it is straining to hold what it cannot hold. The moment you set the impossible burden down into hands large enough to carry it, the straining stops and stability returns. This is one of the great secrets of doing excellent work without being destroyed by anxiety. You give your full effort to the part that is yours. And this is not passivity. You work hard, you prepare thoroughly, you pursue excellence relentlessly. But you refuse to carry the part that was never yours to carry. The outcome belongs to God. Commit your work to Him and let your mind be established. You will find that you actually work better this way, not worse, because a settled mind is a more effective mind than a frantic one, and the person who has released the outcome is free to pour everything into the effort. Proverb 10. A good name is better than riches. Proverbs 22:1. A good name is rather to be chosen than great riches, and loving favor rather than silver and gold. We return now to the theme of what is truly valuable, but from a different angle. And this proverb makes a claim that runs directly against the deepest assumptions of a materialistic age. A good name, a reputation for integrity, trustworthiness, and character, is to be chosen above great riches. Loving favor, the genuine goodwill and respect of others earned through how you treat them, is better than silver and gold. The proverb is establishing a hierarchy of value, and it places reputation and character above wealth, not sentimentally, but with hard, practical wisdom behind it. Consider what a good name actually is and how it functions in a life. Your name, your reputation, the thing people think and feel when they hear who you are, is the accumulated result of thousands of choices made over years. Every promise kept or broken, every truth told or shaded, every kindness shown or withheld, every time you did the right thing when the wrong thing would have been easier, all of it accumulates into this thing called your name. And unlike money, which can be gained or lost quickly, a good name is built slowly and can be destroyed in a moment. It is one of the few things you truly own, in the sense that no one can take it from you. It can only be surrendered by your own choices, and it opens doors that money cannot open. People trust a person with a good name. They extend opportunities to them, believe them in disputes, give them the benefit of the doubt, want to work with them and for them and alongside them. A good name is a form of wealth that compounds quietly across an entire life and outlives the person who built it. The reason this proverb matters so much for decision-making is that we are constantly, in small moments, faced with choices between our name and our immediate advantage. The chance to gain something by cutting a corner, no one will notice. The opportunity to get ahead by shading the truth just slightly. The temptation to break a promise because keeping it has become inconvenient. In each of these moments, there is a trade being offered. You can have this immediate benefit, but it will cost you a small piece of your integrity, a small erosion of your name. And the foolish person focused only on the immediate takes the benefit again and again, not noticing that each time they are spending down something far more valuable than what they are gaining. Until one day they discover that their name is gone, and with it all the trust and favor and opportunity that a good name would have provided, and no amount of money can buy it back. The wise person makes the opposite trade consistently. They protect the name above the immediate gain. They keep the promise even when it is costly. They tell the truth even when a lie would be more profitable. They do the right thing even when no one is watching, because they understand that they are watching and God is watching, and their name is being built or eroded in every one of these hidden moments. And over time, this consistent choosing of the name over the immediate advantage builds something priceless, a reputation so solid that it becomes one of the greatest assets of their entire life. Choose the good name. It is worth more than the gold, and it will still be yours when the gold is gone. Proverb 11. Where there is no vision, the people perish. Proverbs 29:18. Where there is no vision, the people perish. But he that keepeth the law, happy is he. This proverb speaks to something that operates at the level of an entire life, and even an entire people, the absolute necessity of vision, of a compelling picture of where you are going and why. Where there is no vision, no revelation, no guiding sense of purpose and direction, the people perish. The word translated perish carries the sense of being unrestrained, cast off, running wild, falling apart. Without vision, without a clear and compelling sense of direction, people and communities and lives simply come apart. They lose cohesion, they drift. They scatter their energy in 100 directions and build nothing that lasts. Think about what happens to a person who has no vision for their life, no clear sense of who they are trying to become, what they are trying to build, what they are living for. Such a person is at the mercy of every passing impulse and every external pressure. With no vision to organize their decisions around, their choices become reactive rather than intentional. They do whatever feels good in the moment, whatever the crowd is doing, whatever the loudest voice is demanding. Their days fill up with activity but add up to nothing, because there is no unifying direction pulling all that activity toward a meaningful destination. They are busy but not productive, active but not effective, moving but not progressing. This is the perishing the proverb describes, not a dramatic collapse, but a slow dissolution, a life that scatters into fragments because nothing was ever holding it together. Vision is what provides that cohesion. A clear vision of the person you want to become, the life you want to build, the contribution you want to make, the values you want to embody, acts like a magnet that organizes all the iron filings of your daily decisions into a coherent pattern pointing in one direction. When you have vision, decisions become dramatically easier because you have a standard to measure them against. Does this choice move me toward the vision or away from it? Does this opportunity fit the life I am trying to build, or does it scatter my energy away from it? The vision becomes a filter that helps you say yes to the right things, and just as importantly, no to the countless good things that would nevertheless pull you off course. Without vision, you cannot even tell the difference between what belongs in your life and what does not, because you have no picture of what your life is supposed to be. And notice the second half of the proverb, which grounds the vision in something solid. But he that keepeth the law, happy is he. Vision alone, untethered from wisdom and righteousness, can become mere ambition, and ambition without moral foundation destroys people. So the proverb pairs vision with law, with the revealed wisdom and moral order that keeps the vision pointed toward something genuinely good. The happy person, the flourishing person, is the one who has both. A compelling vision that organizes their life, and a foundation of wisdom that keeps that vision aimed at what is truly worth pursuing. Develop your vision. Get clear on where you are going and who you are becoming, and anchor that vision in something deeper than mere self-interest, so that the life you build is not only coherent, but good. Proverb 12. The plans of the diligent. Proverbs 21:5. The thoughts of the diligent tend only to plenteousness, but of every one that is hasty only to want. Here is a proverb about two different relationships with time, And it turns out that your relationship with time is one of the deepest predictors of what your life will amount to. The thoughts of the diligent, the careful, steady, patient planner tend only to plenteousness, to abundance, to increase. But everyone who is hasty, who rushes, who wants it all immediately, who cannot bear to wait or to build slowly, tends only to want, to lack, to poverty. The contrast is between diligence and haste, between the patient builder and the impatient grasper. And the proverb is clear about which one ends in abundance and which one ends in lack. The diligent person operates on a fundamentally different timeline than the hasty one. The diligent person thinks in terms of processes that unfold over time. They plant and wait for the harvest. They save consistently and let it compound. They build skills slowly through repeated practice. They invest in relationships over years. They understand that most valuable things, wealth, mastery, deep relationships, good health, strong character, are not acquired in a burst, but accumulated through steady, patient, consistent effort applied over a long period. And because they understand this, they are willing to do the unglamorous work of showing up day after day, making small deposits into accounts that will not pay out for a long time, trusting the process even when it is slow and the results are not yet visible. The hasty person cannot do this. The hasty person wants the harvest without the planting, the mastery without the practice, the wealth without the patient building. They are drawn to shortcuts, to get-rich-quick schemes, to anything that promises the reward without the process. And precisely because they will not do the slow, steady work that actually produces abundance, they end up in want. Their haste, which feels like a shortcut to plenty, is actually the road to lack, because the shortcuts do not work, the schemes collapse, and the patient accumulation they refuse to do is the only thing that would have gotten them there. The tragedy of haste is that it feels faster, but is actually slower, because it skips the only process that reliably produces what it is chasing. This proverb rewires one of the most important decisions you make constantly without realizing it: the decision of what timeline to operate on. In a culture of instant everything, instant messages, instant delivery, instant gratification, the patience of the diligent has become almost countercultural and therefore almost a superpower. The person who can delay gratification, who can do the slow work, who can make small, consistent deposits and trust the compounding, who can resist the seduction of the shortcut and stay faithful to the patient process, that person will, over time, vastly outperform the frantic, hasty grasper who cannot bear to wait. Choose the timeline of the diligent. Plant, tend, wait, and let the harvest come in its season. That patient steadiness, applied over years, is one of the surest roads to a life of abundance. Proverb 13. He who walks with the wise grows wise. Proverbs 13:20. He that walketh with wise men shall be wise, but a companion of fools shall be destroyed. We return again to the theme of companionship because the Book of Proverbs returns to it again and again, understanding that it is one of the master keys to a well-built life. He that walks with wise men shall be wise. A companion of fools shall be destroyed. The word walks is important. It implies not a single meeting but an ongoing journey, a sustained companionship, a regular sharing of the road. This is about who you walk through life beside, day after day. And the proverb states a law as reliable as any in the book: you will become like them. There is a kind of inevitability built into this proverb that is worth taking seriously, because it removes the illusion so many people live under, the illusion that they can spend their time among fools without being affected by it, that they are strong enough to remain unchanged by the company they keep, that influence flows only outward from them and never inward. Proverbs says no. The walking itself does the work. Over time, through countless small moments of exposure, the standards and assumptions and habits and character of the people you walk with seep into you, whether you intend it or not. You absorb their view of what is normal. You adopt their sense of what is acceptable. You drift toward their level, because prolonged companionship is one of the most powerful shaping forces in all of human life, and it operates largely below the level of conscious awareness. You do not decide to become like them. You simply do, gradually, through proximity. This is why the choice of companions is not a neutral matter of preference, but a decision with enormous consequences for the trajectory of your entire life. If you walk with the wise, with people who make good decisions, who possess self-control, who think carefully, who live with integrity, who pursue what is genuinely worthwhile, then their wisdom will slowly become yours. You will absorb their patterns of thought. You will pick up their habits of discernment. You will find your own standards rising to meet theirs, almost without effort, because that is what walking with the wise does to a person. And if instead you walk with fools, with people who are reckless, who lack self-control, who make destructive choices, who mock wisdom and pursue what harms them, then their folly will slowly become yours too. And the proverb does not soften the outcome. A companion of fools shall be destroyed, not merely inconvenienced, destroyed, because the destruction that follows folly does not stay contained to the fool. It spreads to everyone walking beside him. The rewiring here is to take seriously the fact that you are always becoming like someone, and to choose deliberately who that someone will be. You cannot walk closely with people for years and remain unaffected. So the wise strategy is to be intentional about seeking out the wise, to pursue companionship with people who are further along than you in the things that matter, who will pull you upward rather than dragging you down, whose influence you would actually be glad to absorb. And it means being honest about companionships that are slowly destroying you and having the courage to change them. You do not have to become like the fools around you. But you do have to change who you walk with, because as long as you walk with them, the becoming is already underway. Proverb 14. A gentle tongue is a tree of life. Proverbs 15:4. A wholesome tongue is a tree of life, but perverseness therein is a breach in the spirit. The Book of Proverbs is relentless on the subject of the tongue, returning to it more often than almost any other topic, because it understands something that we are only now rediscovering, that words have immense power, and that the way you use your words is one of the most consequential dimensions of your character. A wholesome tongue, a healing, gentle, life-giving way of speaking, is a tree of life. But perverseness in the tongue, twisted, cutting, destructive speech, is a breach in the spirit, a wound to the soul, a crushing of something inside the person on the receiving end. The image of a tree of life is deliberate and rich. A tree of life is something that gives sustenance, shade, shelter, and healing. Something living things gather around because being near it makes them flourish. And the proverb says that a person's speech can be exactly that, a source of life to everyone around them. Think of the people in your own life whose words have functioned this way, the person whose encouragement arrived at the exact moment you were about to give up and gave you the strength to continue, the person who spoke truth to you gently and helped you see something you needed to see without crushing you in the process. The person whose steady, kind words over the years built you up into someone who could believe in themselves. These people were trees of life to you, and their tool was their tongue. Their words gave life. And you can be that for others. You can become a person whose speech consistently builds, heals, encourages, and strengthens the people around you, so that being near you makes people more alive. But the proverb holds up the opposite possibility with equal seriousness, and it is sobering. Perverseness in the tongue is a breach in the spirit. Twisted, harsh, contemptuous, tearing down speech does real damage. It breaches the spirit. It wounds something deep in the person on the receiving end, and those wounds can last for decades. Most of us can remember cruel words spoken to us long ago that still have the power to sting, that shaped how we see ourselves, that left a breach that took years to heal if it healed at all. Words are not weightless. They are not, as the childhood saying pretends, unable to hurt us. They go deep, they lodge in the spirit, and the person who wields a perverse tongue, who cuts, who mocks, who tears down, who speaks contempt, is doing genuine, lasting harm to the people around them, breaching their spirits one careless sentence at a time. The decision this proverb calls you to is a decision about what kind of tongue you will cultivate, because it is a matter of cultivation, of practice, of habit built over time. You get to choose in each conversation whether your words will give life or cause breach, whether you will build up or tear down, whether being around you will make people flourish or make them smaller. And this is not a fixed trait you are stuck with. It is a discipline you develop. You can train yourself toward a wholesome tongue, toward encouragement, toward gentle honesty, toward words that heal. And as you do, you become a tree of life, a person whose presence and speech become a source of sustenance to everyone within reach. There are few better things to become. Proverb 15. Trust in riches will fall. Proverbs 11:28. He that trusteth in his riches shall fall, but the righteous shall flourish as a branch. This proverb is not against wealth, and it is crucial to understand that from the start, because Proverbs elsewhere treats honest prosperity as a genuine blessing. This proverb is against a particular relationship with wealth, trusting in it, leaning your whole security and identity and hope upon it. He that trusts in his riches shall fall. The righteous, by contrast, shall flourish as a branch, green, alive, fruitful, connected to a living source. The contrast is not between rich and poor. It is between the person whose security rests on their riches and the person whose life is rooted in righteousness, in right relationship with God and right living before Him. The reason trusting in riches leads to a fall is that riches are, by their very nature, an unstable foundation. They can vanish overnight, markets collapse, businesses fail, currencies inflate, investments evaporate, health crises consume savings, economies shift. The wealth that felt so solid and so permanent can disappear with breathtaking speed, and history is full of people who were rich in the morning and ruined by the evening. So the person who has made their riches the foundation of their security has built their house on something that can be swept away, and when it is swept away, as it so often is, they fall, because everything they were leaning on is suddenly gone. They discover, too late, that they built their identity and their hope on sand, and the flood took it all. But there is a deeper problem with trusting in riches, one that afflicts even those whose wealth does not vanish. Trusting in riches is spiritually corrosive because it puts something in the place where God belongs. It makes money the thing you look to for security, for significance, for salvation from your fears. And money is a terrible god. It promises security but delivers anxiety, because the more you have to protect and the more you fear losing. It promises satisfaction, but delivers a hunger that only grows, because no amount is ever quite enough for the heart that has made money its center. The person who trusts in riches, even if the riches never disappear, finds that the riches themselves cannot bear the weight of trust they have placed on them. And the result is a hollow, anxious, restless kind of prosperity that never delivers the security it promised. The righteous, by contrast, flourish as a branch. A branch flourishes not because of what it possesses, but because of what it is connected to. The tree, the root, the source of life flowing up from below. The righteous person is rooted in God, connected to a source of life and security and significance that does not vanish when markets collapse. And so they flourish in a way that does not depend on their circumstances, green and alive and fruitful, whether they have much or little, because their life is drawing from a source that cannot be swept away. This is the invitation of the proverb, not to reject wealth, but to refuse to trust in it. Hold your riches with an open hand, use them well, Be grateful for them, but do not root your security in them. Root yourself instead in what cannot be taken from you, and you will flourish as a branch, alive, fruitful, and unafraid of the floods that sweep away everyone who trusted in riches. Proverbs 16. The fear of man brings a snare. Proverbs 29:25. The fear of man bringeth a snare, but whoso putteth his trust in the Lord shall be safe. Here is a proverb that names one of the most powerful and most destructive forces operating in almost every human life, a force so pervasive that most people never even notice. They are enslaved to it. The fear of man, the fear of what other people think, the fear of their disapproval, their rejection, their mockery, their judgment. The proverb says, this fear brings a snare, a trap, a net that catches you and holds you and keeps you from moving freely. And the alternative it offers is trust in the Lord, which brings safety, freedom, the ability to stand upright regardless of what the crowd thinks. Consider how much of your behavior is secretly governed by the fear of man once you start looking for it. The things you do not say because you are afraid of how people will react. The convictions you soften because you do not want to be judged. The decisions you make not because you believe they are right, but because you fear the disapproval of choosing otherwise. The person you pretend to be because you are terrified of the rejection that might come if people saw who you actually are. The opportunities you do not pursue because you fear looking foolish if you fail. The boundaries you do not set because you cannot bear the thought of someone being upset with you. The fear of man is a snare precisely because it traps you inside a prison whose walls are made of other people's opinions. Opinions that are often imaginary, frequently wrong, and always shifting. And yet you have organized your entire life around avoiding their disapproval. And here is what makes the snare so cruel. It is impossible to escape by giving in to it. The fear of man cannot be satisfied by pleasing people, because people cannot all be pleased at once, and their approval is endless in its demands and fickle in its bestowal. The moment you please one person, you displease another. The moment you win the crowd's approval, the crowd changes its mind. The person governed by the fear of man is on a treadmill that never stops and never arrives, forever adjusting themselves to catch an approval that slips away the moment they reach for it, forever anxious about a judgment that never rests. The snare tightens the more you struggle against it by trying to please, because the very act of organizing your life around approval confirms the fear's power over you. The only way out is the alternative. The proverb names, trust in the Lord. When your security rests in God, in His approval, His acceptance, His unchanging love, you are set free from the tyranny of everyone else's opinion. Not because you stop caring about people, but because you stop needing their approval to feel safe. You already have the approval that matters most, from the one whose opinion actually counts, and so the shifting, fickle, imaginary approval of the crowd loses its power to control you. You become free to do what is right even when it is unpopular, to be who you actually are even when it invites judgment, to make decisions based on truth rather than on the fear of disapproval. This freedom is one of the greatest gifts available to a human being, and it comes through the simple, profound reorientation of moving your trust from the opinions of man to the approval of God. Do that, and the snare falls away, and you can finally stand up straight. Proverbs 17. Answer not a fool according to his folly. Proverbs 26:4-5. Answer not a fool according to his folly, lest thou also be like unto him. Answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own conceit. This is one of the most fascinating entries in the entire book, because at first glance it appears to contradict itself. Two verses sitting right next to each other, giving what seem to be opposite commands. Do not answer a fool according to his folly. Answer a fool according to his folly. Skeptics have pointed to this pairing as a supposed error, but in fact it is a deliberate masterpiece of wisdom, placed side by side precisely to teach one of the deepest lessons in the book, that wisdom is not a rigid set of rules, but a discernment that must read each situation and respond accordingly. The two verses describe two different dangers, and the wise person must judge which danger is present in any given encounter with foolishness. The first verse warns, "Answer not a fool according to his folly, lest thou also be like unto him." This is the danger of getting dragged down to the fool's level. When someone is being absurd, insulting, irrational, or provocative, there is a strong pull to respond in kind, to match their contempt with your contempt, their unreasonableness with your unreasonableness, to descend into the mud and wrestle. And the warning is that if you do this, you become like them. You have let the fool set the terms. You have adopted his methods. You have been pulled down into folly by engaging folly on its own level. Sometimes, then, the wise response is to refuse to engage, to not answer according to the folly, to not be dragged into the pointless, degrading exchange that the fool is trying to provoke. But the second verse warns of the opposite danger. Answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own conceit. Sometimes silence is not wisdom but cowardice, and refusing to respond allows the fool to walk away convinced that his foolishness was actually wisdom, unchallenged, puffed up in his own conceit, and free to spread his folly to others who might be harmed by it. In those situations, the wise response is to answer, to expose the folly, to challenge it directly, to demonstrate why it is wrong, so that the fool is not left smugly believing he has won, and so that others are not deceived. Here engagement is required, not to descend to his level, but to prevent his folly from being validated by silence. So how do you know which one to do? That is precisely the point. That is the wisdom the proverb is training in you. There is no formula. You must read the situation. Is this a fool trying to drag me into a pointless, degrading fight where engaging will only make me foolish too? Then do not answer according to his folly. Disengage, refuse the provocation, keep your dignity. Or is this a situation where foolishness is being spread unchallenged, where silence will let a lie stand and let others be harmed, where the fool needs to be confronted so he does not remain smug in his error? Then answer, engage, expose the folly. The two verses together teach that wisdom lives in discernment, in the trained judgment that reads each situation for what it actually is and responds to the specific danger that is actually present. This is the deepest kind of wisdom, not the application of rigid rules, but the discernment to know which principle a situation calls for. Proverb 18, hope deferred makes the heart sick. Proverbs 13:12. Hope deferred maketh the heart sick, but when the desire cometh, it is a tree of life. This proverb reaches into one of the most painful of all human experiences, and it names it with a tenderness and accuracy that anyone who has lived through a long season of waiting will recognize immediately. Hope deferred makes the heart sick. When what you are longing for keeps being delayed, keeps being postponed, keeps failing to arrive, something in the heart grows genuinely, achingly sick. This is not weakness or lack of faith. It is the honest description of what prolonged waiting does to the human soul. And the fact that Scripture names it so plainly is itself a comfort, because it tells you that your heart sickness in a long season of waiting is not a failure, but a recognized and understood part of the human experience. Think about the particular kind of pain this describes. It is not the sharp pain of sudden loss, which at least has the mercy of finality. It is the slow, grinding, chronic pain of waiting for something that has not come and might never come. The person waiting for a relationship while year after year passes in loneliness. The couple waiting for a child through disappointment after disappointment. The person waiting for a breakthrough in their work that keeps not arriving. The one waiting for a prodigal to come home, for a healing that keeps not coming, for a prayer that seems to go unanswered through long seasons of silence. This deferred hope makes the heart sick in a distinctive way. It wears you down, it drains your strength, it makes it hard to keep hoping at all. Because hope that keeps being disappointed becomes exhausting to maintain. And the proverb does not scold you for this. It simply names it truthfully. Yes, this makes the heart sick. Your experience is real and understood. But the proverb does not end in the sickness. It holds out the other half, and the other half is full of hope. But when the desire comes, it is a tree of life. When the longed-for thing finally arrives, when the waiting ends, when the desire is fulfilled, it is a tree of life, a source of profound joy and renewal and flourishing. The proverb is honest about both halves of the experience. It does not pretend the waiting is not painful, and it does not pretend the fulfillment is not glorious. It holds them together, teaching you two things at once: that your heart's sickness in the waiting is valid and understood, and that the arrival of the long-awaited desire when it comes will be a tree of life so nourishing that it will make the long waiting bearable in retrospect. What does this proverb ask of you in terms of how you live and decide? First, it asks for compassion for yourself and for others in seasons of deferred hope. If your heart is sick from long waiting, do not add self-condemnation to your pain. The sickness is a recognized human experience, not a spiritual failure. And if someone you love is in such a season, do not rush them or minimize their ache. Understand that hope deferred genuinely makes the heart sick and offer patience and presence rather than easy answers. Second, it asks you to keep hoping anyway because the desire, when it comes, is a tree of life, and the ones who eventually taste that fruit are the ones who did not entirely give up hope in the long night of waiting. Hold on, name the sickness honestly, and keep your face turned even faintly toward the possibility that the tree of life is still coming. Proverb 19, the wise in heart will receive commandments. Proverbs 10:8, the wise in heart will receive commandments, but a prating fool shall fall. This proverb draws a line between two kinds of people based on a single revealing characteristic: their response to instruction, correction, and guidance. The wise in heart will receive commandments. They take in instruction, they accept correction, they are teachable, they listen and adjust. The prating fool, the one who is always talking, always defending himself, always explaining why he is right, shall fall. The difference between rising and falling, between wisdom and folly, comes down in large part to this one trait: whether you can receive correction or whether you deflect it with endless talk. Notice the contrast between receiving and prating. The wise person receives. They are quiet enough, humble enough, secure enough to take in what they are being told, to consider that they might be wrong, to accept guidance and instruction, and even rebuke without immediately defending themselves. The fool, by contrast, is described as prating, babbling, talking constantly, always with a rejoinder, always explaining, always justifying, so busy defending his own position that he cannot possibly receive any correction to it. His endless talking is not a sign of wisdom, but a symptom of folly, because it reveals a person who is so committed to being right that he has made himself unteachable. And the unteachable person cannot grow, cannot correct course, cannot avoid the pit he is walking toward, and therefore falls. This connects to one of the most important and least comfortable truths about personal growth. You cannot grow past your ability to receive feedback. Every improvement you will ever make requires first accepting that something needs to improve, which requires being able to hear that something is wrong without your defenses slamming shut. The person who cannot receive correction is sealed inside their current level, unable to rise above it, because every attempt to help them improve bounces off the wall of their self-justification. And this is a matter of the heart, as the proverb says, the wise in heart receive. It is not about intelligence. Highly intelligent people can be catastrophically unteachable, using their intelligence to construct ever more sophisticated defenses of their own errors. It is about a heart posture of humility, a willingness to be corrected, a security deep enough that being wrong is not a threat to be defended against, but an opportunity to grow. The rewiring here is to cultivate the rare and precious ability to receive correction well, to become the kind of person who, when told something hard to hear, does not immediately defend and explain and justify, but instead pauses, considers, and asks whether there might be truth in it. This is difficult because every instinct in us rises to defend the self, to protect our image, to prove we were right. But the person who can override that instinct, who can genuinely receive correction and instruction, and even rebuke without collapsing or attacking, possesses one of the greatest engines of growth available to any human being. They get better continuously because they can absorb the feedback that everyone else deflects. While the prating fools around them talk their way into the pit, defending errors that a moment of humble listening would have corrected, the wise in heart quietly receive, adjust, and rise. Become a receiver. It is one of the surest marks and surest engines of wisdom. Proverb 20. A merry heart does good like a medicine. Proverbs 17:22. A merry heart doeth good like a medicine, but a broken spirit drieth the bones. Long before modern science began to document the profound connection between emotional and physical health, this proverb stated it with striking clarity. A merry heart, a cheerful, joyful, hopeful inner disposition does good like a medicine, actually healing and strengthening the body. But a broken spirit, a crushed, despairing, hopeless inner state dries the bones, actually draining vitality and health from the physical frame. The ancient wisdom understood what we are now confirming in laboratories, that your inner emotional state has real, measurable effects on your physical well-being, that the state of your heart affects the health of your body. This is a proverb that dignifies joy and that matters, because there is a strain of seriousness in religious and ambitious people that treats joy as frivolous, as a luxury, as something less important than duty and discipline and productivity. This proverb says otherwise. It says that a merry heart is not a triviality, but a medicine, something genuinely good for you, something that heals and strengthens and sustains. Joy, cheerfulness, laughter, hope, gratitude. These are not distractions from the serious business of life. They are part of what keeps you healthy enough to live it well. The person who cultivates a merry heart is not being frivolous. They are taking a kind of medicine that strengthens them for everything else. And there is real wisdom in deliberately cultivating joy, in seeking out what genuinely gladdens the heart, in making room for laughter, in practicing gratitude, in refusing to let the weight of life crush out every trace of cheerfulness. This cultivation is not escapism. It is maintenance of the very vitality you need to face life's demands. But the proverb is equally honest about the other side, and its honesty is a gift to anyone carrying a broken spirit. A broken spirit dries the bones. When the inner person is crushed by grief, by prolonged stress, by despair, by hopelessness, it does real damage, draining physical vitality, wearing down the body, drying up the very marrow of life. This is not weakness to be ashamed of. It is a real phenomenon that the proverb names with compassion. And naming it matters because it tells us to take the state of our spirit seriously as something that genuinely affects our whole being. If your spirit is broken, that is not a small thing to push past and ignore. It is drying your bones, and it deserves real attention, real care, real tending. The Proverbs' honesty about the broken spirit is an invitation to take your inner life seriously rather than neglecting it while you attend only to external matters. The wisdom for living here operates in two directions. First, cultivate the merry heart deliberately as a form of medicine. Do not treat joy and gratitude and laughter as optional luxuries, but as genuine contributors to your health and strength, worth pursuing and protecting. And second, take the broken spirit seriously in yourself and others as something that genuinely damages and therefore genuinely deserves care. Do not power through a broken spirit as though it were nothing. Tend to it, seek healing for it, address the grief or despair or crushing weight that is drying your bones. Your inner state is not separate from your well-being, it is central to it. Guard your heart's merriment as medicine and tend your spirit's brokenness as the real wound it is. Proverb 21. Better is a little with righteousness. Proverbs 16:8. Better is a little with righteousness than great revenues without right. Here, the Book of Proverbs makes one of its clearest statements about the relationship between how much you have and how you got it, and it comes down unambiguously on the side of integrity over quantity. Better is a little with righteousness than great revenues without right. A small amount gained rightly is better than a great amount gained wrongly. The proverb is establishing a principle that runs directly against the way much of the world operates, which tends to ask only how much and rarely asks how. Proverbs insists that the how matters more than the how much, that the manner of your gain is more important than the size of it. This is a hard teaching in a results-obsessed culture, because the world tends to celebrate the great revenues regardless of how they were obtained, and to pity the little regardless of how honorably it was earned. The wealthy person is admired, the struggling, honest person is often overlooked, and the question of how the wealth was acquired is politely set aside. But Proverbs refuses to set that question aside. It insists that a little gained with righteousness is genuinely better, not just morally preferable in some abstract way, but actually better, a better possession, a better foundation for a life than great revenues gained without right. And it is worth understanding why this is not mere moralizing, but hard, practical wisdom. The little gained rightly comes with something the great revenues gained wrongly can never have: a clear conscience, a solid foundation, and the absence of the rot that unrighteous gain always carries within it. When you gain something wrongly, through deception, exploitation, corner-cutting, betrayal, you acquire not just the thing, but everything that comes attached to it. The guilt, the fear of exposure, the corroded character, the relationships damaged in the getting, the internal knowledge of what you did, and the instability of anything built on a rotten foundation. Ill-gotten gain does not sit clean in a life. It brings its poison with it. And so the person with great revenues gained wrongly often discovers that the revenues do not deliver the peace and satisfaction they promised, because they are entangled with everything corrupt in the way they were obtained. Meanwhile, the person with a little gained rightly possesses their little cleanly, fully, with a quiet conscience and a solid foundation, and that clean possession of a little is genuinely better than the poisoned possession of a lot. The decision this proverb rewires is the decision you face whenever there is a chance to gain more by compromising how you gain it. A chance to increase the revenue at the cost of the righteousness, and the proverb's counsel is clear and countercultural. Take the little with righteousness. Refuse the great revenues that require abandoning what is right. Not because you are against prosperity, but because you understand that prosperity built on a rotten foundation is not actually prosperity. It is a beautiful house built on sand, and the flood is coming. Build your life on the solid ground of righteous gain, even when it means having less, and you will possess what you have cleanly and securely, which is worth infinitely more than possessing a fortune that is rotting from the inside out. Proverb 22. The way of a fool is right in his own eyes. Proverbs 12:15. The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but he that hearkeneth unto counsel is wise. This proverb names the single most dangerous characteristic of folly, the thing that makes it so difficult to escape. The fool cannot see that he is a fool. The way of a fool is right in his own eyes. From the inside, the fool feels certain he is right. His folly does not appear as folly to him. It appears as good sense, as obvious truth, as the clearly correct way to see things. And this is precisely what makes folly a trap, because a person who feels certain he is right has no reason to change, no reason to seek other perspectives, no reason to question himself. The very thing that would save him, the recognition that he might be wrong, is the thing his folly blinds him to. Contrast this with the mark of wisdom the proverb gives. He that hearkens unto counsel is wise. The wise person seeks counsel. They actively look for perspectives other than their own, precisely because they understand the limits of their own vision. They know that everyone, including themselves, has blind spots, areas where they cannot see clearly, biases they are unaware of, aspects of a situation they are missing. And so the wise person deliberately compensates for this by seeking out other eyes, other minds, other perspectives that can see what they cannot. This is not weakness or indecision. It is the highest form of practical intelligence, the recognition that your own single perspective, however sincere, is inevitably partial, and that wisdom requires supplementing it with the perspectives of others. The difference between these two people is not raw intelligence, but humility about the limits of one's own perspective. The fool is not necessarily unintelligent. He is simply certain, trapped inside his own viewpoint, unable to imagine that he might be missing something. The wise person is not necessarily more brilliant. They are simply humble enough to know that their own eyes are not enough, and therefore they seek counsel. And this humility is the difference between a life that can course correct and a life that cannot. The person who seeks counsel gets the benefit of many perspectives, catches their errors before those errors become catastrophes, and continuously refines their understanding through the input of others. The fool, certain he is right, drives confidently toward every cliff because no one can tell him anything, and his own eyes cannot see the danger that other eyes would have caught. The rewiring here is to build the habit of seeking counsel, especially about the decisions that matter most, and especially when you feel most certain. That last part is crucial and counterintuitive. It is precisely when you feel most sure that you are in the greatest danger, because certainty is exactly the state in which the fool lives, and feeling right is no guarantee of being right. So the wise practice is to deliberately seek out perspectives that might challenge you, to actively look for the counsel that could reveal what your own eyes are missing, to hold your certainty a little more loosely, and ask others what they see. This does not mean you cannot decide or that you must obey every opinion. It means you gather the perspectives, weigh them, and make a far better decision than you could have made trapped inside your own single viewpoint. Seek counsel. It is the humble habit that separates the wise from the fool who is forever right in his own eyes. Proverb 23. A wholesome tongue and the power of life and death. Proverbs 18:21. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and they that love it shall eat the fruit thereof. If the earlier proverb on the tongue told us that our words can be a tree of life or a breach in the spirit, this one makes the claim even more starkly and even more universally. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. Not merely influence, not merely effect. Death and life, the full range from destruction to flourishing, are within the power of the words we speak. This is one of the most staggering statements in the entire book, and it demands that we take our speech with a seriousness that most of us never have. Consider the range of what this claim covers. With your tongue you can speak death. You can crush a child's spirit with contempt, destroy a reputation with a rumor, end a relationship with a cruel sentence, plant despair in a struggling person with a word of hopelessness, tear down what took years to build with a moment of verbal violence. And with that same tongue you can speak life. You can call out potential someone could not see in themselves, restore hope to someone on the edge of giving up, heal a rift with words of reconciliation, build up a person's sense of who they are with steady encouragement, speak truth that sets someone free. The same instrument, the tongue, holds both possibilities within it, and every day you are choosing, sentence by sentence, whether to deploy its power toward death or toward life. Few of us grasp how much power we are wielding in our ordinary conversations, how much life or death we are speaking into the people around us without even noticing. And the proverb adds a striking final phrase, "They that love it shall eat the fruit thereof." Those who love the tongue, who love to use it, who are attached to their own speech, who indulge their words freely, shall eat its fruit, meaning they will experience the consequences of how they use it, whether those consequences are life or death. This is a warning and a promise at once. If you love to speak, understand that you will eat the fruit of your speech. The person who loves to speak death, who indulges in gossip, contempt, cutting remarks, verbal cruelty, will eat the bitter fruit of a life surrounded by the destruction their words created. The person who loves to speak life, who delights in encouragement, truth-healing words, will eat the sweet fruit of a life surrounded by the flourishing their words nourished. You will eat what your tongue plants. That is the law. The decision this proverb calls you to is to take responsibility for the immense power you carry in your mouth. Most people speak carelessly, treating their words as weightless, never considering that with each sentence they are dealing in life and death. The wise person speaks with awareness of this power, choosing deliberately to wield it toward life. This does not mean becoming silent or artificial. It means becoming conscious, aware that your words land in people and do real work there, and choosing to make that work the work of life rather than death. Speak life. Use the staggering power in your tongue to build, to heal, to restore, to call forth the best in the people around you, and you will eat the fruit of it, in a life surrounded by the flourishing your words help to create. Proverb 24, "Commit thy way, and he shall bring it to pass." Proverbs 37, and specifically the pattern echoed in Proverbs 16:9. "A man's heart deviseth his way, but the Lord directeth his steps." Here is a proverb that captures with perfect balance one of the deepest tensions in all of life: the relationship between human planning and divine sovereignty, between the plans we make and the outcomes we do not control. A man's heart devises his way. You make your plans, you form your intentions, you chart your course, and this is right and good and human to do. But the Lord directs his steps, the actual unfolding, the real path your feet end up walking, is under the direction of God. Both halves are true at once, and holding them together is one of the great secrets of a peaceful and effective life. Many people go wrong by grasping only one half of this truth. Some seize the first half, a man's heart devises his way, and turn it into a frantic, exhausting insistence on controlling everything through the sheer force of their own planning. They plan obsessively, grip every variable, and live in constant anxiety because they have taken upon themselves the entire burden of determining their own outcomes, as though the Lord directing their steps were not part of the picture at all. Others seize the second half. The Lord directs his steps and turn it into a passive fatalism, refusing to plan or take responsibility, drifting along and calling their drift faith as though the human heart devising its way were not also part of the picture. Both are half-truths, and half-truths held as though they were whole become distortions. The wisdom is in holding both together, and it produces a way of living that is both diligent and peaceful. You devise your way. You plan thoughtfully, set goals, prepare carefully, take responsibility for the direction of your life. You do the genuine human work of intentional living because that is your part and the proverb affirms it. But you hold those plans with an open hand in humble recognition that the Lord directs the steps, that the actual outcome is under a governance larger than your own, that your plans will be shaped and redirected and sometimes overruled by a wisdom and a sovereignty greater than yours. And this holding together produces something beautiful. You get the diligence of the planner without the anxiety of the control freak, and the peace of the trusting without the passivity of the fatalist. You plan with all your heart, and you release the outcome with all your heart, and both at once. This is deeply practical for how you make decisions. It means you should plan, really plan, thoughtfully and diligently, using the mind God gave you to devise your way. But it also means you should hold those plans loosely enough that when God directs your steps in a different direction than you planned, when doors close that you expected to open, when the path bends in ways you did not choose, you can follow the redirection with trust rather than fighting it with anxiety. Some of the greatest goods in your life will come through the steps God directed that you never would have devised. So devise your way with diligence and trust the one who directs your steps with peace. And let the tension between planning and surrender become not a source of anxiety but a source of rest. Proverb 25. Go to the ant, consider her ways. Proverbs 6:6-8. Go to the ant, thou sluggard. Consider her ways and be wise, which having no guide, overseer, or ruler, provideth her meat in the summer, and gathereth her food in the harvest. This proverb sends us to one of the humblest creatures on earth to learn one of the most important lessons in life, and there is a deliberate humility in that. Go to the ant. Do not go to the mighty, the impressive, the powerful. Go to the tiny, overlooked ant and consider her ways and be wise. The lesson the ant teaches is the lesson of self-directed diligence, of doing the necessary work without needing to be told, without external compulsion, out of an internal understanding of what the seasons require. Look closely at what the proverb praises in the ant, which having no guide, overseer, or ruler, provideth her meat in the summer, and gathereth her food in the harvest. The ant has no boss standing over her, no manager forcing her to work, no external authority compelling her diligence. And yet she works. She gathers in the summer, stores up in the harvest, prepares during the season of provision for the season of need that she knows is coming. This is the heart of the lesson. The ant does the right thing without being made to, driven by an internal understanding of what the times require rather than by external pressure. She is self-directed. She does not need to be supervised into diligence. She simply understands the rhythm of the seasons and acts accordingly, preparing in the time of plenty for the time of scarcity. This is precisely the quality that separates those who build stable lives from those whose lives lurch from crisis to crisis. And it is a quality most people never develop because they only work under external compulsion. Many people are diligent only when someone is watching, only when a boss is demanding, only when a deadline is bearing down, only when the pressure is immediate and external. Remove the external pressure and they drift, procrastinate, neglect what needs doing until crisis forces their hand. But the person who has learned the way of the ant does the necessary work from internal understanding. Saves during the good times because they understand hard times may come, maintains their health before it breaks down, tends their relationships before they fracture, prepares for the future before the future arrives, demanding a preparation that was never made. They do not need a crisis to compel them because they have the ant's wisdom of preparing in season, self-directed, without an overseer. The rewiring here is to develop internal, self-directed diligence, to become the kind of person who does what needs to be done because you understand it needs to be done, not because someone is forcing you. This is one of the master keys to a well-built life, because no one can supervise you into a good life. The external overseers are only ever present for a fraction of what matters, and the vast majority of the decisions that shape your future are made in private, unsupervised, where only your own internal diligence can drive you. Consider the ant. Learn to gather in the summer and store up in the harvest, driven by your own understanding of the seasons. Become self-directed in your diligence, and you will build quietly and steadily, and without needing to be watched, a life that stands when the winter comes. Proverb 26. The simple believeth every word. Proverbs 14:15. The simple believeth every word, but the prudent man looketh well to his going. In an age drowning in information, misinformation, manipulation, and noise, this proverb has never been more urgently relevant. The simple believes every word. The naive, undiscerning person accepts whatever they are told, believes whatever they hear, is swayed by whatever claim reaches their ears, without examination, without scrutiny, without the critical filter that separates truth from falsehood. The prudent man, by contrast, looks well to his going. He examines, he considers, he scrutinizes his path. He does not accept things uncritically, but tests them before he acts on them. The simplicity being criticized here is not innocence, which is a virtue, but a lack of discernment, which is a dangerous vulnerability. The simple person has no filter. They hear a claim and believe it. They encounter a persuasive voice and are persuaded. They are moved by whatever is most recent, most confident, most emotionally compelling, without any capacity to step back and ask whether it is actually true. And in a world absolutely saturated with people and systems trying to manipulate belief, advertisers, propagandists, scammers, ideologues, algorithms designed to capture and exploit attention, this lack of discernment makes a person endlessly exploitable. They are blown about by every wind, believing this today and its opposite tomorrow, manipulated by whoever gets to them last, incapable of holding steady because they have no internal capacity to evaluate what they are being told. The prudent person looks well to their going, and this phrase is rich. It suggests careful attention to one's path, deliberate examination before action, a refusal to simply accept and proceed without first considering. The prudent person, hearing a claim, asks, "Is this actually true? What is the evidence? Who is telling me this? And what might they want? Does this align with what I know to be reliable? Is there another side I am not hearing?" This examination is not cynicism, which believes nothing, but discernment which tests before it believes. And this capacity to test, to examine, to scrutinize before accepting is one of the most protective abilities a person can possess in a world full of those who would exploit an uncritical mind. The prudent person is very hard to manipulate precisely because they do not believe every word. They look well to their going. The decision this proverb rewires is the decision made constantly of how you will handle the flood of claims and information and persuasion that reaches you every single day. Will you be simple, believing every word, swayed by whatever is loudest and most recent, endlessly exploitable? Or will you be prudent, looking well to your going, examining claims before you accept them, testing what you are told before you act on it? Cultivate discernment. Develop the habit of asking whether something is actually true before you believe it, of considering the source and the evidence and the other side before you are persuaded. In an age of manipulation, this discernment is not optional. It is essential armor. The simple believe every word and are led anywhere. The prudent look well to their going and cannot be so easily led astray. Proverb 27. He that is slow to anger. Proverbs 16:32. He that is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he that ruleth his spirit than he that taketh a city. This proverb makes a comparison that would have startled its original hearers and should startle us too, because it inverts the entire ancient hierarchy of what makes a person impressive. In a world that celebrated military conquest above all, the mighty warrior, the conqueror who could take a city, this proverb says that the person who is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and the person who rules his own spirit is greater than the one who captures a city. The greatest conquest, it declares, is not the conquest of others or of cities, but the conquest of oneself. Consider the radical revaluation this represents. The world has always been impressed by external power, by the ability to dominate others, to win battles, to conquer territory, to bend the world to one's will. These are the achievements that fill the history books and earn the monuments. But this proverb quietly insists that a far greater and far rarer achievement is the mastery of one's own internal life, the ability to rule one's own spirit, to be slow to anger, to govern the reactions and impulses and passions that live inside oneself. And when you think about it honestly, the proverb is obviously right. It is entirely possible to conquer a city while being completely enslaved to your own temper. History is full of mighty conquerors who could subdue nations but could not subdue their own rage, their own appetites, their own impulses, and who were ultimately destroyed not by any external enemy, but by the enemy within that they never learned to rule. Self-mastery is harder than the conquest of others, precisely because the enemy is always present, never sleeps, and cannot be escaped. You can walk away from an external opponent, but you cannot walk away from yourself. The temper that flares, the impulse that demands to be obeyed, the passion that clamors for indulgence, the anger that rises hot and immediate, these live inside you, and the work of ruling them is constant, lifelong, and unglamorous. There are no monuments erected to the person who, in 10,000 private moments, chose not to lose their temper, chose to master the impulse, chose to rule their spirit instead of being ruled by it. And yet this quiet, invisible, endlessly repeated victory is, according to the proverb, greater than taking a city. Because the person who cannot rule their own spirit is at the mercy of every provocation, forever reacting, forever controlled by whatever stimulus triggers their unruled passions. While the person who has achieved self-mastery possesses a freedom and a strength that no external conquest can provide. The rewiring here is to redirect your ambition toward the conquest that actually matters most, the conquest of yourself. Most people pour their ambition into external achievements while leaving their internal life entirely ungoverned, and so they may accomplish much in the world while remaining slaves to their own reactions. The wise person understands that ruling their own spirit, being slow to anger, mastering their impulses, governing their passions, is the higher achievement, the greater strength, the conquest that makes every other good thing possible. And this is achievable not through a single dramatic victory, but through the patient practice of self-government in 10,000 ordinary moments. Be slow to anger. Rule your spirit. It is a greater thing than taking a city, and it is the foundation of every other kind of strength. Proverb 28, faithful are the wounds of a friend. Proverbs 27:6. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. This proverb draws a distinction that could save you from some of the most costly mistakes of your life. The distinction between the painful truth of a true friend and the pleasant flattery of a false one. Faithful are the wounds of a friend. When a true friend wounds you, tells you a hard truth, challenges you, points out something you do not want to hear, those wounds are faithful, meaning they are trustworthy, reliable, given out of genuine love and concern for your good. But the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. When a false friend or an enemy showers you with flattery, agreement, and pleasant affirmation, those kisses are deceitful, hiding an indifference or even a hostility to your actual well-being. The wisdom here cuts against a powerful and dangerous human tendency. We naturally prefer the pleasant flattery to the painful truth. It feels better to be told what we want to hear. It is more comfortable to be surrounded by people who affirm us, agree with us, and never challenge us. And so we tend to be drawn toward the flatterers and away from the truth-tellers, gravitating toward the ones whose words feel good and avoiding the ones whose words sting. But this proverb warns that our preference is exactly backwards, that we are drawn toward what harms us and away from what helps us, because the flattery that feels good is deceitful, and the wound that hurts is faithful. The very fact that a friend's words wound us is often a sign that they are telling us a truth we needed to hear, a truth the flatterers were too indifferent or too self-interested to tell us. Think about what it actually takes for a friend to wound you with truth. It is far easier to flatter than to confront. Flattery costs the flatterer nothing and often gains them something: your goodwill, your favor, your continued company. But telling you a hard truth risks your anger, your rejection, the damage of the relationship. So when a friend loves you enough to risk all that, to say the difficult thing they know you do not want to hear, to wound you with a truth for the sake of your good, they are demonstrating a rare and precious kind of love. Their willingness to wound you faithfully is the evidence of how much they actually care, because they care more about your actual good than about your immediate approval of them. The flatterer, by contrast, cares more about keeping your approval than about your actual good, which is why they will tell you comfortable lies rather than uncomfortable truths. The decision this proverb calls you to is twofold. First, learn to value the faithful wounders in your life and to be suspicious of the constant flatterers. When someone loves you enough to tell you a hard truth, recognize the rarity and the value of what they are giving you, and do not punish them for it by withdrawing your friendship. Instead, treasure them as the true friends they are proving themselves to be. And be wary of those who only ever affirm, whose words are always pleasant, who never challenge you, because their deceitful kisses may be hiding an indifference to your real well-being. Second, be willing to be that kind of friend to others, to love people enough to wound them faithfully when they need it, rather than flattering them deceitfully to keep their easy approval. Both receiving faithful wounds and giving them are marks of the deepest and truest friendship, the kind that actually helps you build a good life, rather than merely making you feel good on the way to building a ruined one. Proverb 29. The borrower is servant to the lender. Proverbs 22:7. The rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. This proverb states a hard economic truth with unflinching clarity, and understanding it can protect you from one of the most common traps that ensnares people and steals their freedom. The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. This is not a statement of how things ought to be, but a statement of how things are, a description of the power dynamics that govern economic relationships. And the second half in particular contains a warning that, if heeded, can preserve one of the most precious things you possess: your freedom. The borrower is servant to the lender. When you borrow, you enter into a form of servitude. This is not metaphorical hyperbole. It is a precise description of what debt does to a life. When you owe money, a portion of your future labor, your future income, your future freedom is no longer yours. It belongs to the lender. You must work to pay the debt. You cannot freely leave a job you hate if you need it to service your debt. You cannot take the risk you want to take, make the change you want to make, pursue the opportunity you want to pursue, if doing so would jeopardize your ability to make your payments. The debt becomes a master that governs your choices, and you become its servant, your options constrained, your freedom mortgaged to the obligation you took on. Many people who imagine themselves free are in fact servants, bound by the debts that dictate what they can and cannot do with their own lives. This is why the wisdom of Proverbs, here and elsewhere, treats debt with such seriousness and caution. It is not that borrowing is always and absolutely forbidden. There are times when it may be a reasonable tool used wisely. But the proverb insists that you understand what debt actually is before you take it on. It is the sale of a portion of your future freedom in exchange for present consumption. Every debt you incur is a chain that binds some part of your future to the will of another. And in a culture that encourages debt relentlessly, that normalizes borrowing for everything, that makes it easy and even celebrates it, this ancient warning is desperately needed. Many people mortgage their entire futures, chain themselves to years or decades of servitude in exchange for things they wanted now and could not wait for, and only later discover the weight of the servitude they signed up for. The rewiring here is to treat your freedom as precious and to be extremely cautious about selling it through debt. Before taking on any debt, understand clearly that you are entering a form of servitude, that you are giving up a portion of your future freedom, and ask honestly whether what you are getting is worth the freedom you are surrendering. And where you can, pursue the opposite path. The path of living below your means, avoiding unnecessary debt, and building toward the freedom that comes from owing no one. There is a profound liberty in being the servant of no lender, in having your future labor and income belong fully to you, in being free to make choices without the constraint of debts that must be served. Guard that freedom. Be slow to sell it. The borrower is servant to the lender, and freedom once mortgaged is hard to buy back. Proverb 30. Train up a child in the way he should go. Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. This is one of the most quoted proverbs in the entire book, beloved by parents across the generations, and it contains a principle that extends far beyond parenting into the deepest truth about how human character is formed. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. The principle is that early, deliberate formation shapes the entire trajectory of a life, that what is trained into a person in the formative seasons tends to endure across the whole span of their years. The word train is important and often overlooked. The proverb does not say inform a child or lecture a child or tell a child the way he should go. It says train, which implies practice, repetition, habit, the patient shaping of character through consistent formation over time. Training is not the transfer of information, it is the formation of a person through repeated practice until the right way becomes second nature, built into the very grain of who they are. This is how character is actually formed, not primarily through being told what is right, but through being trained in it, through the patient repetition of right practices until they become the natural habits and instincts of the person. And the proverb's promise is that this early training endures. What is deeply formed in the early seasons tends to remain across the whole of life, so that when the person is old, they will not depart from the way they were trained in. While this proverb speaks directly to the raising of children, its principle illuminates something universal about the power of formation and habit in every human life, including your own. You are, in a real sense, always training yourself, forming your own character through the practices you repeat, building the habits that will shape the trajectory of your future. Every practice you repeat is training you in a direction. Every habit you form is shaping the person you are becoming. And just as early training shapes a child's whole life, the training you give yourself now, the habits you build, the practices you repeat, the patterns you establish, will shape the person you become and tend to endure across your years. This means the question of what you are training yourself in, what habits you are forming, what practices you are repeating, is one of the most important questions of your life. Because you are laying down the tracks your future will run on. The wisdom for living here operates in two directions. If you are raising children or influencing any young person, take with utmost seriousness the power of early formation. Understand that you are not merely informing them, but training them, shaping through consistent practice the character that will endure across their whole lives, and invest accordingly in training them in the way they should go. And for yourself, recognize that you are always in training, always forming habits that will shape your future, and take deliberate control of that formation. Do not let your habits form by accident, training you in directions you never chose. Instead, train yourself deliberately in the way you should go. Build the habits, repeat the practices, establish the patterns that will form you into who you want to become. Formation is powerful, and it endures. Use it deliberately, and it becomes one of the greatest tools you have for building a life that stands. Proverb 31. As he thinketh in his heart, so is he. Proverbs 23:7. For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. Few sentences in all of literature have proven as profound or as enduring as this one, and it names a truth so fundamental that entire schools of psychology and philosophy have spent centuries elaborating what this single ancient line states in 7 words. As a person thinks in his heart, so is he. Your thoughts, running in the hidden depths of your heart, are shaping the person you are becoming. The inner thought life, invisible to everyone else, is the forge in which your character, your outlook, and ultimately your entire life are being formed. This proverb points to a truth that most people never fully grasp, that you become, over time, what you habitually think. The thoughts you rehearse repeatedly, the mental patterns you fall into again and again, the inner monologue that runs beneath the surface of your days. These are not passive or inconsequential. They are actively shaping you. The person who habitually thinks thoughts of fear becomes a fearful person. The person who habitually thinks thoughts of gratitude becomes a grateful person. The person who habitually rehearses grievances becomes bitter. The person who habitually dwells on possibilities becomes hopeful, because thought, repeated over time, carves grooves in the soul, and those grooves become the shape of who you are. You are, in the deepest sense, the accumulated product of what you have habitually thought in the hidden chambers of your heart. This is enormously significant for how you build your life, because it means that the management of your thought life is not a minor spiritual hobby, but a central determinant of who you become. Most people give almost no deliberate attention to their thoughts. They let their minds run on autopilot, thinking whatever thoughts happen to arise, rehearsing whatever fears or resentments or fantasies drift through, never realizing that this unmanaged inner life is actively forming them into a particular kind of person. But the wise person understands that thoughts are the seeds of character, and that therefore the cultivation of the thought life is one of the most important works they can undertake. They take responsibility for what they habitually think, deliberately directing their minds toward what is true, good, and worthy, refusing to endlessly rehearse the thoughts that would form them into someone they do not want to become. The rewiring here is to recognize that you have far more control over who you become than you think, because you have control over what you habitually think, and what you habitually think is forming who you are. This does not mean you can control every thought that arises. Thoughts come unbidden, and you cannot always prevent them from appearing. But you can control which thoughts you dwell on, which ones you rehearse, which ones you feed, and which ones you starve. You can, over time, deliberately cultivate patterns of thought that form you into a wiser, stronger, more grateful, more hopeful person, and deliberately starve the patterns that would form you into a fearful, bitter, defeated one. As you think in your heart, so you become. Take that truth with utmost seriousness, tend the garden of your thoughts with deliberate care, and you will be shaping, in the most fundamental way possible, the person you are becoming. Proverb 32. A word fitly spoken. Proverbs 25:11. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in pictures of silver. After so many proverbs warning about the dangers of the tongue, here is one that celebrates its beauty when used well, and it does so with one of the most gorgeous images in all of Scripture. A word fitly spoken, the right word, spoken at the right moment, in the right way, is like apples of gold in pictures of silver, or in settings of silver. Picture that. Golden fruit displayed in an intricate frame of silver, a thing of exquisite beauty and craftsmanship and value. That, the proverb says, is what a well-chosen word spoken at the right time is like. Not merely useful, but beautiful. Not merely effective, but precious. The key phrase is fitly spoken, and it points to something more subtle than merely saying good things. It is about the fitness of the word to the moment, the right word, yes, but also the right timing, the right tone, the right occasion. A true thing said at the wrong moment can do harm. The same true thing said at the right moment can bring healing and beauty. Encouragement offered at the exact moment someone is about to give up. A word of correction delivered when the person is finally ready to hear it. A truth spoken gently when the heart is soft enough to receive it. A perfectly chosen phrase that captures what someone needed to understand at precisely the moment they needed to understand it. This is the art the proverb celebrates. Not just speaking well in general, but speaking the right word, fitted precisely to the moment, so that it lands with the full beauty and power it was meant to have. This is a genuine art, and it is worth cultivating deliberately because the fitness of a word to its moment can multiply its power many times over. The same words that would fall flat or even wound at the wrong time can, at the right time, change the entire course of someone's day or life. This is why the wise person attends not only to what they say, but to when and how they say it. They develop sensitivity to the moment, reading whether a person is ready to hear a hard truth or whether it needs to wait, sensing when a word of encouragement is desperately needed, discerning the tone that will let their words land as intended rather than being rejected. This sensitivity, this fitness of word to moment, transforms ordinary speech into something like apples of gold in settings of silver, beautiful, valuable, precisely crafted for the moment it serves. The invitation of this proverb is to become an artist of the fitting word, someone whose speech is not merely correct, but beautiful in its timing and its craft. This is a high aspiration and a lifelong pursuit, but it is one of the most rewarding forms of wisdom to develop, because words fitly spoken do enormous good in the world. They heal, they encourage, they redirect, they illuminate, and they do so at the precise moment when their beauty and power can accomplish the most. So, attend to the fitness of your words. Do not merely ask what is true to say, but when and how to say it so that it lands as the gift it is meant to be. And you will find that your words, fitly spoken, become like apples of gold in pictures of silver, beautiful gifts precisely crafted, that adorn and enrich every life they touch. Proverb 33, He that covereth his sins shall not prosper. Proverbs 28:13, He that covereth his sins shall not prosper, but whoso confesseth and forsaketh them shall have mercy. This proverb addresses one of the most universal human strategies for dealing with our own wrongdoing, and it declares that strategy a failure while pointing to the one that actually works. He that covers his sins shall not prosper. The instinct to hide our failures, to conceal our wrongs, to bury our mistakes and pretend they did not happen. This instinct, the proverb says, does not lead to prosperity, but away from it. The alternative is confession and forsaking. Whoso confesses and forsakes them shall have mercy. The path to mercy, to freedom, to genuine prosperity of soul runs not through concealment, but through honest acknowledgement and genuine turning. The strategy of covering is deeply intuitive and almost universal. When we do wrong, our first instinct is to hide it, to conceal it from others, to minimize it to ourselves, to construct explanations and justifications that let us avoid facing it honestly. We cover our sins because facing them is painful, because acknowledging them threatens our image, because confession feels like weakness and exposure, and so we bury them, hoping they will simply go away if we refuse to look at them. But the proverb declares this strategy a failure. He that covers his sins shall not prosper. The covering does not work. The buried wrong does not disappear. It festers. The concealed failure does not resolve. It corrodes. The energy spent hiding accumulates into a burden of secrecy and self-deception that weighs on the whole person, blocking the very prosperity and freedom the covering was meant to protect. The alternative the proverb offers is counterintuitive but liberating: confession and forsaking. To confess is to bring the wrong into the light, to acknowledge it honestly rather than hiding it, to stop the exhausting work of concealment and simply tell the truth about what you have done. And to forsake is to turn from it, to abandon it, to change direction rather than merely admitting the wrong while continuing in it. Together, confession and forsaking form the path to mercy. The honest acknowledgement that stops the corrosion of concealment, joined to the genuine turning that breaks the pattern of the wrong. And the promise attached is mercy. Whoso confesses and forsakes them shall have mercy. Not condemnation for the honesty, but mercy. The very thing we fear will destroy us if we admit it turns out to be the doorway to the mercy that heals us. The rewiring here is to abandon the universal but futile strategy of covering and to embrace the liberating path of confession and forsaking. This runs against every instinct because covering feels safe and confession feels dangerous. But the proverb reveals the truth. Covering is the actual danger, the path that does not prosper, while confession and forsaking is the path to mercy and freedom. When you do wrong, and you will, as every human does, resist the instinct to bury it, and instead bring it into the light honestly, acknowledge it, and turn from it. The weight of concealment will lift. The corrosion of secrecy will stop, and you will find, where you feared condemnation, the mercy that the proverb promises to everyone who chooses the hard, honest, liberating path of confessing and forsaking rather than the easy, futile, corroding path of covering. This is one of the deepest secrets of a free and unburdened life. Proverb 34. The righteous falls 7 times and rises again. Proverbs 24:16. For a just man falleth 7 times and riseth up again, but the wicked shall fall into mischief. This proverb offers one of the most encouraging and most misunderstood pictures of what a righteous life actually looks like, and grasping it can free you from a paralyzing misconception. For a just man falls 7 times and rises up again. Notice what this says and what it does not say. It does not say the righteous person never falls. It says the righteous person falls 7 times, which in the biblical idiom means many times, repeatedly, fully. The mark of the righteous is not that they never fall. The mark of the righteous is that they rise up again every time they fall. This shatters a misconception that paralyzes and discourages a great many sincere people. The belief that a good life is one without failures, and that each fall is evidence of fundamental failure. Under this misconception, every stumble becomes a source of despair, every failure a reason to conclude that you are not really righteous, not really good, not really going to make it. But the proverb paints a completely different picture. The righteous person falls and falls and falls again 7 times, and this falling is not what disqualifies them. What defines them, what marks them as righteous, is that after each fall, they rise. They get back up. They do not stay down. The falling is part of the journey, the rising is the mark of the character, and this is enormously freeing because it means your failures do not disqualify you, do not prove you are not righteous, do not mean you have failed at the whole enterprise. What matters is not that you fell, but whether you rise. Contrast this with what the proverb says about the wicked. But the wicked shall fall into mischief. The wicked also fall. Now everyone falls, but the wicked fall into mischief, into calamity, and the implication is that they do not rise in the same way. The difference between the righteous and the wicked is not found in whether they fall, since both fall, but in what happens after the fall. The righteous rise, the wicked are overcome. And this locates the real dividing line, not at the point of failure, which is universal, but at the point of response to failure, which is where character actually reveals itself. Anyone can fall. The question that reveals who you truly are is what you do once you have fallen, whether you rise up again as the righteous do, or whether you stay down, overcome by the fall. The rewiring here is to release the paralyzing demand for a life without falls and to focus instead on becoming someone who rises. You will fall 7 times and more. You will fail, stumble, make mistakes, fall short of what you intended. This is not evidence that you are a failure. It is simply the universal human experience that even the righteous share. What will determine the shape of your life is not the falling, which you cannot entirely avoid, but the rising, which you can choose every single time. So when you fall, not if, but when, do not let the fall convince you that you are finished, that you have failed at the whole thing, that there is no point in continuing. Instead, rise, get back up, return to the path. Because the just man falls 7 times and rises again, and that rising, repeated faithfully through every fall, is the actual mark of a righteous and well-built life. It is not the absence of falling, but the faithfulness of rising that defines you. Proverb 35, Whoso findeth a wife findeth a good thing. Proverbs 18:22. Whoso findeth a wife findeth a good thing, and obtaineth favor of the Lord. This proverb speaks to one of the most consequential relationships in a human life, and it does so with a warmth and a clarity that honors the profound good that a life partnership can be. Whoso finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor of the Lord. Though the proverb speaks specifically of finding a wife, its wisdom illuminates the broader truth about the immense good of a faithful, well-chosen life partnership, and the way such a partnership can be one of the greatest blessings a life can hold. The proverb calls the finding of a good spouse the finding of a good thing, and this simple phrase carries real weight. A good marriage, a faithful partnership with a well-chosen person, is one of the profoundest goods available in human life. It provides companionship against the deep human loneliness. It provides a partner in the building of a life, someone to share the burdens and multiply the joys, someone who walks beside you through every season, who knows you fully and remains committed anyway. It provides a context for the daily practice of love, patience, forgiveness, and self-giving that shapes and matures the character in ways few other things can. And the proverb goes further, calling it obtaining favor of the Lord, suggesting that such a partnership is not merely a human good but a divine blessing, a gift from God that carries His favor with it. To find such a partnership is to find something genuinely, deeply good. But embedded in the proverb's language of finding is an important implication about the significance of choosing well, because not every partnership is the good thing this proverb describes, and the difference lies largely in the wisdom of the choosing. The same Book of Proverbs that celebrates the good spouse also speaks soberly about the pain of a contentious or ill-chosen partnership, recognizing that a partnership entered unwisely can bring as much sorrow as a partnership entered wisely brings joy. This means that one of the most consequential decisions in a life is the decision of whom to bind yourself to in this deepest of partnerships. It is a decision that deserves the fullest exercise of the wisdom this entire book is trying to cultivate. The discernment to see character clearly, the patience to choose well rather than desperately, the wisdom to value the things that actually make a partnership good over the surface things that fade. The wisdom for living here is to honor the profound good that a faithful life partnership can be, and to bring your fullest wisdom to the choosing and the keeping of it. If you are seeking such a partnership, seek it wisely. Value character over surface. Look for the qualities that make for a good and lasting partnership, and choose with the discernment that so consequential a decision deserves, rather than settling out of loneliness or rushing out of desperation. And if you have found such a partnership, treasure it as the good thing and the favor of the Lord that the proverb declares it to be, investing in it, tending it, and refusing to take for granted one of the greatest goods a life can hold. A good partnership is indeed a good thing, worth choosing wisely and keeping faithfully across all the seasons of a shared life. Proverb 36. The lot is cast into the lap. Proverbs 16:33. The lot is cast into the lap, but the whole disposing thereof is of the Lord. This proverb reaches into the mystery of chance and sovereignty, of the apparently random and the divinely governed, and it offers a perspective that can bring deep peace in a world that so often feels chaotic and arbitrary. The lot is cast into the lap. In the ancient world, casting lots was a method of making decisions that appeared entirely random, like rolling dice, leaving the outcome to chance. But the proverb makes a startling claim about even this: the whole disposing thereof is of the Lord. Even the outcome of what appears completely random is under the governance of God. Even the roll of the dice, even the seemingly arbitrary turn of events, is somehow within his sovereign ordering. This is a profound and mysterious claim, and it addresses one of the deepest anxieties of the human condition: the fear that life is fundamentally random, chaotic, arbitrary, governed by blind chance and meaningless luck. Under this fear, the good and bad things that happen to us are simply the roll of indifferent dice, and there is no meaning, no purpose, no governing hand behind the events of our lives, only randomness. And this fear can be deeply destabilizing, because a life governed by pure chance is a life with no ultimate security, no reason to hope, no assurance that anything means anything. But the proverb speaks directly into this fear with a different vision, that what appears random is not in fact ungoverned, that behind even the seemingly arbitrary events of life, there is a sovereign ordering, a divine governance, a purpose at work, even in what looks like pure chance. Now, this is a truth that must be held with care and humility, because it does not mean that everything that happens is simple to understand, or that we can always trace the divine purpose behind the events of our lives, or that difficult and painful things are not genuinely difficult and painful. The proverb is not offering a glib explanation that makes all suffering easy. What it offers is deeper and more mysterious. The assurance that beneath the apparent randomness of life, there is a governance, a sovereignty, a hand at work that we cannot always see or understand. And this assurance, held in faith, brings a profound peace that the vision of pure randomness can never provide. It means that the seemingly chance events of your life are not ultimately meaningless, not ultimately arbitrary, but somehow woven into a larger ordering that, though you cannot fully see it, is real and is governed by one who is good. The wisdom for living here is to release the anxiety of a life imagined as pure chance, and to rest in the deeper vision of a life governed, even in its apparent randomness, by a sovereign and good God. This does not mean you stop making wise decisions or exercising the diligence and prudence this whole book commends. The proverb about the lot being disposed by the Lord sits comfortably alongside all the proverbs about human responsibility, because both are true at once. What it means is that after you have done your part, you can release the outcomes that are beyond your control into the hands of the one who governs even what appears random, trusting that the seemingly arbitrary turns of your life are not ultimately arbitrary at all. This trust is one of the deepest sources of peace available to a human being. The peace of knowing that even the roll of the dice, even the events you cannot control or explain, are somehow held within the governance of a God who is good, and that nothing in your life is finally abandoned to blind and meaningless chance. Proverb 37. He that hath no rule over his own spirit. Proverbs 25:28. He that hath no rule over his own spirit is like a city that is broken down and without walls. This proverb returns to the crucial theme of self-mastery, and it does so with an image that would have carried enormous weight in the ancient world and still illuminates a profound truth today. He that has no rule over his own spirit is like a city that is broken down and without walls. In the ancient world, a city's walls were its protection, its security, the very thing that kept it safe from enemies and raiders and chaos. A city without walls was utterly vulnerable, exposed to every threat, unable to protect itself, at the mercy of anyone who wished to harm it. And the proverb says that a person who has no rule over their own spirit is exactly like such a city, defenseless, exposed, vulnerable to every threat, unable to protect what matters. The comparison is precise and illuminating. Walls give a city the ability to determine what enters and what does not, to keep out what would harm it, and to protect what is precious within. Self-control, rule over one's own spirit, functions exactly the same way for a person. When you have rule over your spirit, you can determine what you allow to control you and what you do not. You can keep out the impulse that would harm you, resist the provocation designed to control you, refuse entry to the passion that would lead you to destruction. Your self-mastery is your wall, giving you the power to protect yourself from being overrun by every impulse, every provocation, every passion that assaults you. But when you have no rule over your own spirit, you have no wall, and so you are overrun by whatever comes. Every impulse controls you. Every provocation succeeds in stirring you. Every passion that arises sweeps you away because there is no wall to keep it out. You are a broken-down city at the mercy of anything and anyone. Consider how vulnerable this makes a person. The one without self-control can be manipulated by anyone who learns which buttons to push, because they have no wall to resist the manipulation. They can be provoked into destructive reactions by anyone who wishes to provoke them, because they have no wall to hold back the reaction. They are swept from crisis to crisis by their own uncontrolled impulses, unable to protect themselves from the consequences of their own unruled passions. Their lack of self-mastery leaves them perpetually exposed, defenseless against both the manipulations of others and the destructive impulses within themselves. They may imagine that their unrestrained reactivity is a kind of freedom or strength, but it is the opposite. It is the defenselessness of a city whose walls have crumbled at the mercy of every threat. The rewiring here is to understand that self-control is not a restriction on your freedom, but the very wall that protects it, and to invest accordingly in building that wall. Many people resist the idea of self-control, imagining it as a cage that confines them, when in fact it is a wall that protects them, the very thing that gives them the power to determine their own responses, rather than being overrun by every impulse and provocation. The person with rule over their own spirit is not less free but more free, because they cannot be so easily manipulated, provoked, or swept away. They stand secure behind the wall of their self-mastery, protected from the threats that overrun those who have no such wall. So build the wall, cultivate rule over your own spirit. It is not a prison, but a fortress. And it is the very thing that will keep you secure when everything around you and within you is trying to break through and take control. Proverb 38. Pride and the fall, humility and honor. Proverbs 18:12. Before destruction, the heart of man is haughty, and before honor is humility. Here the Book of Proverbs returns to one of its most persistent themes, the relationship between pride and humility and the very different destinations to which each leads. And it states the pattern with memorable precision. Before destruction, the heart of man is haughty, and before honor is humility. Two paths, two trajectories. Haughtiness, pride, arrogance, an inflated sense of self goes before destruction. Humility goes before honor. The proverb reveals an order, a sequence, a reliable pattern. What comes first determines what comes after, and the inner posture of pride or humility precedes and determines the outcome of destruction or honor. We have already explored how pride goes before a fall, but this proverb adds the crucial other half, that humility goes before honor. And this second half is just as counterintuitive and just as important as the first. The world tends to believe that honor is achieved through self-promotion, through asserting your own greatness, through pushing yourself forward and demanding recognition. But the proverb reveals the opposite pattern, that the path to genuine honor runs through humility, that the honor which lasts, the honor which is genuinely bestowed rather than merely grasped, comes to those who did not demand it but who walked the path of humility and were honored precisely because they did not exalt themselves. There is a deep principle here that runs throughout the wisdom of Scripture, that the one who exalts himself will be humbled, and the one who humbles himself will be exalted. Why does humility go before honor? Because humility possesses the very qualities that lead to genuine growth, genuine excellence, and genuine relationship, all of which produce honor over time. The humble person remains teachable, and so they keep growing. The humble person can receive correction, and so they keep improving. The humble person does not need to dominate or diminish others, and so they build the kind of relationships that lead to honor freely given. The humble person attributes their successes rightly rather than arrogantly, and so they avoid the pride that precedes destruction. In all these ways, humility is not merely a nice moral quality, but the actual soil in which genuine honor grows, while pride is the soil in which destruction grows. The pattern is not arbitrary. It flows from the very nature of what pride and humility do to a person, and to their relationships, and to their trajectory. The rewiring here is to abandon the world's strategy of grasping for honor through self-promotion, and to embrace the deeper path of humility that actually leads to honor that lasts. This is profoundly countercultural in an age of relentless self-promotion, where everyone is encouraged to advertise their own greatness, to demand recognition, to push themselves forward. But the proverb reveals that this grasping path leads not to honor, but toward the destruction that follows haughtiness. The path that actually leads to honor is the humble one, the path of remaining teachable, of serving rather than demanding to be served, of letting your genuine excellence speak for itself rather than trumpeting it, of lifting others rather than exalting yourself. Walk that humble path, and honor tends to come freely and lastingly, precisely because you did not grasp for it. Before honor is humility. Choose the humility, and let the honor follow in its own time. Proverb 39. The path of the just is as the shining light. Proverbs 4:18. But the path of the just is as the shining light that shineth more and more unto the perfect day. After so many proverbs about the dangers and warnings of life, here is one of pure hope and encouragement, painting a picture of the trajectory of a wise and righteous life that can sustain you through every difficult season. The path of the just is as the shining light that shines more and more unto the perfect day. Picture the dawn, the first faint light of morning, gradually growing brighter, increasing steadily until it reaches the full brilliance of noon, the perfect day. That, the proverb says, is what the path of the righteous is like, a trajectory of increasing light, growing brighter and brighter over time, moving always toward greater fullness and clarity and brilliance. This is a picture of hope and of process, and both dimensions matter deeply. It is a picture of hope because it declares that the direction of the righteous life is upward and brightening, that things are moving toward greater light, not less, that the trajectory bends toward increasing brilliance rather than fading into darkness. For anyone in a difficult season, this is a profound encouragement. If you are on the path of the just, the darkness you may be experiencing now is not the destination, but a stage in a journey that is moving toward more and more light. The dawn does not stay dim, it brightens. And the path of the righteous does not stay dark, it shines more and more into the perfect day. Whatever dimness you are in now, the trajectory of a righteous life is toward increasing light. And that is a hope worth holding on to through even the darkest seasons. But it is also a picture of process, and this dimension is just as important because it sets realistic expectations for how growth actually happens. The light shines more and more, gradually, progressively, increasingly. It does not leap instantly from midnight to noon. It brightens by degrees, steadily, over time. And this teaches patience with the process of growth, both in yourself and in your circumstances. You will not become fully wise overnight. You will not arrive at the perfect day in a single leap. The growth is gradual, the brightening is progressive, and this is not a flaw in the process, but the very nature of it. Just as the dawn brightens by degrees, your growth in wisdom and character and the flourishing of your life will come more and more gradually over time. And understanding this protects you from the discouragement of expecting instant arrival, freeing you instead to trust the gradual brightening of a path that is genuinely moving toward the perfect day. The wisdom for living here is to take the long view of your growth and your life, trusting the trajectory even when the present moment is dim. If you are on the path of the just, walking in wisdom and righteousness, then you are on a path that shines more and more unto the perfect day, even if today feels dark. So do not be discouraged by the dimness of a present season, and do not be impatient with the gradualness of your growth. The light is increasing, the path is brightening. The trajectory is toward more and more light, moving steadily toward the fullness of the perfect day. Hold on to that hope through every dark season, trust the gradual process of the brightening, and keep walking the path of the just, knowing that it leads, however gradually, toward an ever-increasing light. Proverb 40. A man's gift maketh room for him. Proverbs 18:16. A man's gift maketh room for him, and bringeth him before great men. This proverb speaks to the way that genuine gifts, talents, and excellence create their own opportunities in the world, opening doors that no amount of striving or self-promotion could force open. A man's gift makes room for him and brings him before great men. When you develop and offer a genuine gift, a real skill, a true excellence, something valuable you can do or provide, that gift creates space for you, opens opportunities, and can bring you into rooms and before people that you could never have reached by pushing or demanding. The gift itself does the work of making room. There is deep wisdom here about how advancement and opportunity actually work, and it corrects a common misunderstanding. Many people believe that getting ahead is primarily about self-promotion, about pushing, about aggressively marketing themselves and demanding attention. But this proverb points to a different and more reliable mechanism. The gift makes room. When you have genuinely developed something valuable, real skill, real excellence, real capacity to provide something people need and want, That genuine value tends to create its own opportunities. People seek out excellence. Doors open for those who can genuinely deliver. The gift, when it is real and well developed, becomes its own advertisement, its own door opener, its own path into rooms that striving alone could never unlock. The room is made not by the force of your self-promotion, but by the reality of your gift. This reframes where your energy is best invested, and the reframing is profoundly practical. Rather than pouring your energy primarily into promoting yourself, into demanding recognition, into forcing doors open through the sheer force of your striving, this proverb suggests that the wiser investment is in developing a genuine gift, in cultivating real excellence, real skill, real value that you can offer, because the gift, once genuinely developed, makes its own room. The excellence, once truly achieved, opens its own doors. The value, once really created, brings you before the great without your having to force your way in. This does not mean you never make yourself known or never pursue opportunities. It means that the foundation of genuine opportunity is genuine gift, and that the deepest investment you can make in your own advancement is the development of real excellence rather than the mere promotion of yourself. The rewiring here is to focus first and foremost on developing something genuinely valuable, trusting that genuine value creates its own opportunities. In a culture obsessed with self-promotion and personal branding, this ancient wisdom offers a grounding correction. The surest path to genuine opportunity is genuine gift. So invest deeply in developing real excellence in something valuable, a skill, a craft, a capacity, an offering that genuinely serves and genuinely delivers. Cultivate it patiently, develop it fully, make it real. And trust that this gift, once genuinely developed, will make room for you in ways that striving and self-promotion never could, bringing you before opportunities and people that your gift has earned. The gift makes room. Develop the gift and let the room be made. Proverb 41. Better to dwell in a corner of the housetop. Proverbs 21:9. It is better to dwell in a corner of the housetop than with a brawling woman in a wide house. This proverb uses a vivid and even slightly humorous image to make a serious point about the profound impact of the relational environment in which you live. And though it speaks specifically of a contentious spouse, its wisdom illuminates the broader truth about how the daily atmosphere of conflict or peace shapes the quality of a life. It is better to dwell in a corner of the housetop, a small, exposed, uncomfortable perch on the roof, than in a wide, spacious, comfortable house filled with constant contention. The proverb declares, with striking clarity, that peace in a small space is better than conflict in a large one, that the relational atmosphere matters more than the physical comfort. The image is deliberately extreme to make its point unforgettable. A corner of the rooftop is a tiny, exposed, uncomfortable place to live, cramped, without shelter, far from ideal. A wide house is spacious and comfortable, everything the rooftop corner is not. And yet the proverb insists that the uncomfortable rooftop corner in peace is better than the comfortable wide house in constant contention. Why? Because the daily atmosphere of your relational environment affects the quality of your life more than physical comfort does. Constant conflict, perpetual contention, the daily grinding friction of a hostile relational environment poisons everything, no matter how comfortable the surroundings. And peace, even in a small and uncomfortable space, allows for a quality of life that all the comfort in the world cannot provide in the presence of unending conflict. The atmosphere matters more than the accommodations. This wisdom extends far beyond the specific situation of a contentious marriage into a broad principle about the value of relational peace and the cost of relational conflict. It teaches that when you are making decisions about where and how and with whom to live your daily life, the peace of your relational environment deserves enormous weight. more weight even, than the comforts and advantages that might come packaged with conflict. A prestigious position in a toxic environment, a comfortable arrangement filled with constant contention, a materially advantageous situation poisoned by perpetual conflict. The proverb suggests that these are often not worth it, that the corner of the rooftop in peace may genuinely be the better choice than the wide house filled with brawling. Because you live in the atmosphere every day, and the atmosphere shapes the quality of your days far more than the comfort of the surroundings does. The rewiring here is to give proper weight to relational peace when you make the decisions that shape your daily environment, recognizing that the atmosphere you live in matters more than the comfort of your surroundings. Many people optimize for comfort, prestige, and material advantage while neglecting the relational atmosphere, and then find themselves miserable in comfortable circumstances, poisoned by constant conflict. The wiser approach weighs the peace of the environment heavily, sometimes even choosing the smaller or less comfortable option for the sake of the peace it offers over the larger or more comfortable option, poisoned by contention. Peace in a corner is better than conflict in a palace. Weigh the atmosphere heavily in your decisions, and you will build a life whose daily quality is shaped by peace rather than poisoned by perpetual conflict. Proverb 42, the simple inherit folly, but the prudent are crowned with knowledge. Proverbs 14:18, the simple inherit folly, but the prudent are crowned with knowledge. This proverb draws, once more, the fundamental contrast that runs throughout the entire book between the simple and the prudent, and it describes what each ultimately receives as the harvest of their way of living. The simple inherit folly. They receive folly as their inheritance, their portion, the natural result of their undiscerning way of life. But the prudent are crowned with knowledge. Knowledge becomes their crown, their honor, their glory, the natural result of their careful and discerning way. The word inherit and the word crowned both point to what accumulates over time as the natural consequence of the path one walks. Consider the language of inheritance and crowning, because it reveals something important about how the results of wisdom and folly accumulate. An inheritance is something you receive over time, that accrues to you as a result of your position and your relationships. The simple inherit folly, because folly is what naturally accrues to a life lived without discernment. One foolish choice building on another, the consequences accumulating until folly becomes the whole estate they have built up and now must live in. And a crown is something that comes as honor, as the visible result of what one has achieved and become. The prudent are crowned with knowledge, because knowledge is what naturally accrues to a life lived with careful discernment. One wise choice building on another, understanding accumulating, until knowledge becomes the crown that adorns and honors them. In both cases, the result is not sudden but accumulated, the natural harvest of a way of living pursued consistently over time. This teaches something crucial about the long-term trajectory of the different ways of living. They compound. The simple person, making undiscerning choices day after day, is not merely making isolated mistakes. They are accumulating an inheritance of folly, building up a life increasingly characterized and shaped by the accumulated consequences of foolishness. And the prudent person, making discerning choices day after day, is not merely getting individual decisions right, they are accumulating a crown of knowledge, building up a life increasingly characterized and adorned by the accumulated fruit of wisdom. The daily choices compound. The path you walk today, extended over years, becomes either an inheritance of folly or a crown of knowledge, depending on whether you walk the simple way or the prudent way. Small differences in the quality of your daily discernment, compounded over a lifetime, produce enormous differences in what you ultimately inherit or are crowned with. The rewiring here is to recognize that your daily choices are accumulating into either an inheritance of folly or a crown of knowledge, and to pursue the prudent path, knowing that it compounds toward a crown. This long-term compounding view of wisdom and folly gives weight to even the small choices, because you understand that each one is a deposit into either the estate of folly or the crown of knowledge that you are building over time. So choose the prudent path, day by day, decision by decision, knowing that discernment compounds, that careful choices accumulate, that the prudent are ultimately crowned with knowledge as the natural harvest of a life of consistent discernment. And avoid the simple path, knowing equally that undiscerning choices compound toward an inheritance of folly. What you will ultimately inherit or be crowned with is being determined right now, in the quality of the choices you are making today. Proverb 43. A friend loveth at all times. Proverbs 17:17. A friend loveth at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. This proverb offers one of the most beautiful and enduring definitions of genuine friendship ever written, and it names the quality that distinguishes true friendship from its many counterfeits. A friend loves at all times, not at some times, not at convenient times, not when it is easy or advantageous, but at all times. And a brother is born for adversity. The deepest bonds are proven and revealed precisely in the hard times, in the adversity when lesser connections fall away. The proverb points to constancy as the defining mark of real friendship. The love that remains through all seasons, and especially through the difficult ones. The phrase, "at all times," is the heart of it, because it distinguishes genuine friendship from the many relationships that love only at certain times. Many relationships love in the good times, when you are successful, when you are useful, when being connected to you is advantageous, when everything is easy and pleasant. But these relationships reveal their shallowness when the good times end, falling away when you are no longer successful or useful or advantageous, disappearing when adversity comes and the friendship would actually cost something. The proverb names the difference. A true friend loves at all times, through the good and the bad, when it is advantageous and when it is costly, when you are up and when you are down. This constancy, this love that does not depend on circumstances or advantage, is the mark that separates genuine friendship from its many fair-weather counterfeits. And the second half deepens this. A brother is born for adversity. The deepest bonds are those that show up in adversity, that are, in a sense, made for the hard times, revealed and proven precisely when things fall apart. It is easy to be surrounded by people in prosperity. The test of who truly loves you comes in adversity, when the fair-weather connections vanish and only the true ones remain. And this teaches you two things at once: how to recognize genuine friendship and how to be a genuine friend. You recognize genuine friends by their constancy through adversity, by their showing up when it would be easier to fall away, by their love that remains when the good times end. And you become a genuine friend by offering exactly this constancy to others, by loving at all times, by showing up in their adversity, by being the brother born for the hard times, rather than the fair-weather companion who vanishes when things get difficult. The wisdom for living here is to value and cultivate the rare treasure of constant friendship, both in recognizing it and in offering it. Genuine friends who love at all times are among the greatest treasures a life can hold, and they are proven not in the easy seasons, but in the hard ones. So treasure the friends who have shown up in your adversity, who have loved you at all times, recognizing the rarity and the value of what they offer. And commit to being that kind of friend yourself, offering the constancy that genuine friendship requires, showing up for others in their hard times, loving at all times, rather than only when it is easy or advantageous. Both the having and the being of such friendship are among the deepest goods of a well-built life. A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. Seek such friends and be such a friend, and you will have one of the greatest riches available to any human being. Proverb 44. Every purpose is established by counsel. Proverbs 20:18. Every purpose is established by counsel, and with good advice make war. This proverb returns to the theme of seeking wise counsel, but it frames it in terms of the establishment of purposes and the undertaking of significant endeavors, and it uses the imagery of war to underscore how much is at stake. Every purpose is established by counsel, and with good advice make war. Before you establish a significant purpose, before you undertake a major endeavor, before you go to war, literally or metaphorically, in any significant conflict or major undertaking of your life, the proverb counsels you to seek good counsel, to gather wise advice, to establish your plans through the input of others rather than charging ahead on your own. The imagery of war is deliberate and instructive because war is the ultimate high-stakes endeavor, the undertaking where the cost of getting it wrong is catastrophic and the value of good planning is greatest. And the proverb says that with good advice you make war, that even in the highest stakes endeavors, perhaps especially in them, the wise course is to seek counsel, to establish your strategy through the input of many advisors, to plan carefully through the gathering of wisdom, rather than rushing in on your own judgment alone. This applies to all the significant undertakings of your life, all the metaphorical wars you must fight, all the major purposes you seek to establish. The wise approach is to establish them through counsel, gathering good advice before you commit to the endeavor and while you are carrying it out. There is a deep principle here about the multiplication of wisdom through the gathering of counsel, and it connects to the earlier proverbs about seeking counsel and about the value of many advisors. Any single person, however wise, has a limited perspective, limited experience, limited ability to foresee all the factors and consequences involved in a significant endeavor. But when you gather good counsel, you multiply the wisdom brought to bear on the decision, drawing on the perspectives and experience and foresight of others to supplement your own. And for a significant purpose or a major undertaking, this multiplication of wisdom can be the difference between success and catastrophe. The endeavor established by good counsel is far more likely to succeed than the one launched on the basis of a single person's limited perspective, because the counsel catches the errors, foresees the dangers, and strengthens the plan in ways that no individual could achieve alone. The rewiring here is to build the habit of establishing your significant purposes through counsel, of seeking good advice before and during your major undertakings, rather than charging ahead on your own judgment alone. Many people, especially confident and capable ones, resist this, preferring to rely on their own judgment and to move quickly rather than slowing down to gather counsel. But the proverb reveals the wisdom of the counseled approach, especially for the high-stakes endeavors where the cost of error is greatest. So, before you establish a significant purpose, before you undertake a major endeavor, before you go to war in any of the significant conflicts of your life, gather good counsel. Seek the wisdom of trusted advisors. Establish your plans through the multiplication of wisdom that counsel provides. And you will undertake your significant endeavors far more likely to succeed, having established them, as the proverb counsels, through the good advice that turns a limited individual perspective into the multiplied wisdom of many. Proverb 45. The fear of the Lord prolongeth days. Proverbs 10:27. The fear of the Lord prolongeth days, but the years of the wicked shall be shortened. This proverb connects the reverence of God, which the book named at its very beginning as the foundation of wisdom, to the length and quality of life itself, drawing a link between the way of wisdom and the flourishing of one's days. The fear of the Lord prolongs days, but the years of the wicked shall be shortened. There is a connection, the proverb declares, between living in reverent wisdom and the length and flourishing of life, and between living in wickedness and the shortening and diminishing of it. The way of wisdom tends toward life. The way of wickedness tends toward its diminishment. This proverb must be understood rightly, not as a rigid mechanical guarantee that every righteous person will live long and every wicked person will die young. Since the Book of Proverbs deals in the general patterns and tendencies of life rather than absolute guarantees, and life in a broken world includes exceptions to every general rule. What the proverb describes is a genuine tendency, a real pattern woven into the nature of things, that the way of wisdom and reverence tends toward the prolonging and flourishing of life, while the way of wickedness tends toward its shortening and diminishment. And this tendency makes sense when you consider how the two ways of living actually play out. The way of wisdom involves self-control, prudence, the avoidance of destructive excess, the care for one's relationships and responsibilities, the peace that comes from right living, all of which tend to support and prolong a flourishing life. The way of wickedness involves the opposite: destructive excess, reckless choices, the violence and conflict and chaos that wicked living produces, all of which tend to shorten and diminish life. There is a natural connection, in other words, between how you live and the length and quality of your days, not as a magical reward and punishment, but as the natural outworking of the choices involved in each way of living. The person who lives in reverent wisdom, exercising self-control, avoiding destructive excess, caring for their health and relationships and responsibilities, living in peace rather than perpetual conflict, tends, as a natural result, toward a longer and more flourishing life. And the person who lives in wickedness, indulging destructive excess, making reckless and violent choices, generating conflict and chaos, tends, as a natural result, toward a shortened and diminished life. The connection is real, woven into the nature of how these choices play out over time, even though it operates as a tendency rather than an absolute and exceptionless law. The wisdom for living here is to recognize that the way of wisdom and reverence is not only right, but life-giving, tending toward the prolonging and flourishing of your days, while the way of wickedness is not only wrong, but life-diminishing, tending toward the shortening and diminishing of them. This gives an additional dimension to the choice between wisdom and folly, between reverence and wickedness. It is a choice not only about righteousness, but about life itself, about whether your way of living will tend to support and prolong a flourishing life or to undermine and shorten it. So choose the way of wisdom and reverence, not only because it is right, but because it is life-giving, tending toward the fullness and length of days that the proverb promises to those who walk in the fear of the Lord. The way of wisdom is the way of life, in every sense. Proverb 46, a prudent wife is from the Lord. Proverbs 19:14. House and riches are the inheritance of fathers, and a prudent wife is from the Lord. This proverb draws a distinction between the good things that come to us through ordinary human means and the deeper goods that come as gifts from God. And though it speaks specifically of a prudent wife, its wisdom illuminates the broader truth about the difference between what we can acquire and what we can only receive as a gift. House and riches are the inheritance of fathers. These are the good things that come through ordinary human means, through inheritance, through effort, through the normal workings of the world. But a prudent wife is from the Lord. A good and wise life partner is something deeper, a gift that comes ultimately from God, not merely acquired through human means, but received as a divine blessing. The distinction is illuminating and worth pondering. There are good things in life that come through ordinary means, that can be acquired through effort and inheritance and the normal workings of the world. House and riches, material provisions, the goods that human striving can obtain. And then there are deeper goods that seem to come as gifts, that cannot simply be acquired through effort or guaranteed through striving. but that come as blessings from beyond ourselves. A genuinely good and wise life partner is placed by this proverb in the second category, not merely a possession to be acquired, but a gift to be received. Something that comes ultimately from God rather than merely from human effort. And there is a deep truth in this, because the deepest goods of life often do have this quality of giftedness, of coming to us as blessings we could not simply manufacture or guarantee through our own striving, however much our effort and wisdom play a part. This teaches a posture of gratitude and humility toward the deepest goods of life, recognizing them as gifts rather than mere acquisitions. When you receive one of these deeper goods, a genuinely good life partner, but also other profound blessings that come to you beyond what your effort could guarantee. The right response is gratitude, the recognition that you have received a gift, that this good came to you not merely through your own striving, but as a blessing from beyond yourself. And this posture of gratitude changes how you hold these goods, not with the pride of one who acquired something through their own effort, but with the humility and thankfulness of one who received a gift they could not have guaranteed. This gratitude, in turn, tends to make you treasure and tend the gift more faithfully, because you hold it as the precious and undeserved blessing it is, rather than as a mere possession you are entitled to. The wisdom for living here is to recognize the difference between the goods you can acquire through effort and the deeper goods that come as gifts, and to hold the latter with the gratitude and humility that gifts deserve. Do your part, certainly, in seeking and cultivating the good things of life, including the profound good of a wise life partnership. Effort and wisdom have their place. But recognize also that the deepest goods have a quality of giftedness, coming to you ultimately as blessings from God rather than as guaranteed products of your striving. And when you receive such a gift, hold it with gratitude, treasuring it as the divine blessing the proverb declares it to be, tending it faithfully as the precious and undeserved good that it is. This posture of grateful humility toward the gifts of life is itself a mark of wisdom, and it deepens the joy and the faithfulness with which you hold the greatest blessings of your life. Proverb 47. He that refresheth others shall be refreshed. Proverbs 11:25. The liberal soul shall be made fat, and he that watereth shall be watered also himself. This proverb reveals one of the most beautiful and counterintuitive dynamics in all of life, a principle that overturns the scarcity thinking that governs so much of human behavior. The liberal soul, the generous person, the one who gives freely, shall be made fat, meaning shall prosper and flourish. And he that waters shall be watered also himself. The one who pours out to refresh others is, in the very act of giving, refreshed in return. The proverb describes a dynamic in which generosity, far from depleting the giver, actually enriches them, and refreshing others somehow results in being refreshed yourself. This runs directly against the scarcity thinking that governs so much of human behavior, the assumption that life is a zero-sum game in which giving to others necessarily means having less yourself, in which the way to flourish is to accumulate and withhold rather than to give and pour out. Under this scarcity thinking, generosity seems foolish, a depletion of your own resources for the benefit of others, a losing strategy in the competition for limited goods. But the proverb reveals a different reality, one in which generosity is not depletion, but enrichment, in which the generous soul is made fat and the one who waters is watered in return. There is a mysterious abundance woven into the nature of generosity, such that giving, rather than diminishing the giver, somehow enriches them, and pouring out to refresh others somehow results in the giver's own refreshment. How does this work? In part, it works through the natural dynamics of human relationship and reciprocity. The generous person builds goodwill, deepens relationships, and creates a web of connection and mutual support that enriches their own life. The one who waters others finds themselves surrounded by flourishing they helped create, and part of that flourishing flows back to them. But it also works at a deeper level in the very nature of the generous soul itself. There is something about the posture of generosity, the openness, the abundance-mindedness, the willingness to give freely, that enriches the giver from within, that produces a flourishing of soul that the grasping, withholding, scarcity-minded person never experiences. The generous soul is made fat not merely through external reciprocity, but through the internal flourishing that generosity itself produces in the one who practices it. Giving enlarges the giver. The rewiring here is to abandon the scarcity thinking that makes generosity seem foolish, and to embrace the abundance dynamic that the proverb reveals, in which giving enriches and watering others results in being watered yourself. This is not a call to give in order to get, which would corrupt the generosity into mere transaction. It is a recognition that genuine generosity, freely offered, participates in a dynamic of abundance in which the giver is enriched, the waterer is watered, and the liberal soul is made fat. So give freely, water others generously, pour out to refresh the people around you, and trust the mysterious abundance the proverb describes, in which this generosity, far from depleting you, enriches you, and this watering of others results somehow in your own refreshment. This is one of the most beautiful secrets of a flourishing life, that the path to being enriched runs, paradoxically, through the generous enriching of others. Proverb 48. The discretion of a man deferreth his anger. Proverbs 19:11. The discretion of a man deferreth his anger, and it is his glory to pass over a transgression. This proverb returns to the theme of anger and self-mastery, but it adds a beautiful dimension by connecting it to glory, to honor, to the greatness of character revealed in the ability to overlook an offense. The discretion of a man defers his anger, and it is his glory to pass over a transgression. To defer anger, to hold it back rather than being immediately swept into it, is the mark of discretion, of wisdom. And to pass over a transgression, to overlook an offense rather than seizing on it, is described not as weakness, but as glory, a mark of honor, of greatness, of nobility of character. The first half connects to the earlier proverbs about being slow to anger and ruling one's spirit. The discretion of a man defers his anger. The wise person does not react immediately to every provocation, does not allow themselves to be instantly swept into anger by every offense. Instead, their discretion defers the anger, creates a space between the provocation and the response, holds back the immediate reaction so that wisdom rather than raw impulse can govern their response. This deferring of anger is a mark of the self-mastery the book has praised throughout, the ability to rule one's own spirit rather than being ruled by every passing provocation. But this proverb adds something to that familiar theme, and the addition is beautiful. The addition is in the second half. It is his glory to pass over a transgression. To overlook an offense, to let a transgression pass rather than seizing on it and demanding redress, is here called a person's glory. This is a striking and countercultural claim, because the world often treats the overlooking of offenses as weakness and the seizing on them, the demanding of redress, the refusal to let anything pass, as strength. But the proverb reverses this, declaring that it is glory, honor, greatness of character to be able to pass over a transgression. There is a nobility in the person who is secure enough, magnanimous enough, great enough of soul to let an offense pass rather than being consumed by the need to respond to every slight. Their ability to overlook, to forgive, to let it go, is not weakness, but a genuine glory, a mark of the largeness of soul that lesser characters never attain. The rewiring here is to reframe the overlooking of offenses not as weakness, but as glory, and to cultivate the discretion that defers anger and the magnanimity that passes over transgression. Many people are consumed by the need to respond to every slight, to seize on every offense, to demand redress for every wrong, imagining that this makes them strong. But the proverb reveals that the true glory belongs to the person who can defer their anger and pass over a transgression, who is secure and magnanimous enough to let offenses go rather than being consumed by them. So cultivate this glory. Develop the discretion that creates space between provocation and response, deferring your anger rather than being swept into it. And cultivate the magnanimity that can pass over a transgression, overlooking offenses rather than seizing on them, secure and large-souled enough to let things go. This is not weakness, but the truest glory of character, and it will free you from the exhausting consumption of a life spent responding to every slight. Proverb 49. Buy the truth and sell it not. Proverbs 23:23. Buy the truth and sell it not, also wisdom and instruction and understanding. This proverb speaks to the supreme value of truth and wisdom, using the language of commerce to convey how we should treat them, as things worth buying at any price and never selling for any price. Buy the truth and sell it not, also wisdom and instruction and understanding. Buy the truth, acquire it, invest in it, pay whatever it costs to obtain it, and sell it not. Once you have it, never trade it away, never surrender it for any price, never let it go no matter what you might gain by abandoning it. The proverb treats truth and wisdom as possessions of supreme value, worth acquiring at any cost and worth keeping against every temptation to surrender them. The instruction to buy the truth implies that truth has a cost, that acquiring it requires investment, effort, sometimes sacrifice. Truth is not always cheap or easy to obtain. Sometimes it costs us our comfortable illusions, our cherished but false beliefs, our pride, our convenient self-deceptions. Acquiring truth may require the hard work of study and examination, the humility of admitting we were wrong, the courage of facing realities we would rather avoid. And the proverb says, pay the price, buy the truth. Whatever it costs to acquire genuine truth, genuine wisdom, genuine understanding, it is worth paying, because these are possessions of supreme value, worth more than whatever comfort or pride or illusion we must surrender to obtain them. Invest in the truth. Pay its price, acquire it whatever it costs, and then, having acquired it, sell it not. Never trade it away, never surrender it for any price. This second instruction is just as important as the first, because there are constant pressures and temptations to sell the truth once we have it, to trade it away for various advantages. The pressure to abandon what we know to be true in exchange for acceptance, for advancement, for comfort, for the approval of others, for the avoidance of conflict. The temptation to sell our integrity, to compromise our understanding, to trade away hard-won wisdom for immediate gain. And the proverb says, sell it not. However much you might gain by trading away the truth, do not do it. The truth and wisdom you have acquired at real cost are worth more than anything you might gain by surrendering them, and to sell them for any price is to make a catastrophic trade, giving away what is supremely valuable for what is comparatively worthless. The rewiring here is to treat truth and wisdom as possessions of supreme value, worth acquiring at any cost, and worth keeping against every pressure to surrender them. This means, on the one hand, being willing to pay the price to acquire genuine truth and wisdom, investing the effort, embracing the humility, facing the hard realities, paying whatever it costs to obtain what is genuinely true and wise. And it means, on the other hand, holding fast to the truth once you have it, refusing to sell it for acceptance or advancement or comfort or approval, keeping your integrity and your hard-won understanding against every pressure and temptation to trade them away. Buy the truth and sell it not. Treat truth and wisdom as the supremely valuable possessions they are, worth any cost to acquire and worth keeping against every price, and you will possess something more valuable than all the gold you might have gained by trading them away. Proverb 50. A good man leaveth an inheritance to his children's children. Proverbs 13:22. A good man leaveth an inheritance to his children's children, and the wealth of the sinner is laid up for the just. This proverb invites us to lift our eyes beyond our own lifetimes and to think in terms of generations, of the legacy we leave, of the long shadow our lives cast into the future beyond our own days. A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. His goodness extends beyond his own life, blessing not only his children, but his children's children, casting forward a legacy that outlasts him. The proverb calls us to a generational vision, to think about the enduring impact of our lives, to build not only for ourselves, but for those who will come after us. There is a largeness of vision here that stands in stark contrast to the short-term thinking that governs so much of human life. Most people think, at most, about their own lifetimes, about their own comfort and success and flourishing within the span of their own years. But the proverb calls us to a larger vision, to think in terms of generations, to consider the inheritance we will leave not only to our children, but to our children's children, to build lives whose positive impact extends far beyond our own days. This generational thinking changes how we live and what we build, because it lifts our eyes from the immediate and the personal to the enduring and the generational, calling us to invest in things that will outlast us and to leave a legacy that will bless those who come after us. And the inheritance in view here is not merely financial, though it includes the material provision that wise and diligent living can build up to bless future generations. The deepest inheritance a good person leaves is not only money, but character, wisdom, faith, values, and the example of a life well lived. The good person leaves to their children's children not only whatever material provision they have built up, but the far more valuable inheritance of a good name, a legacy of integrity, a model of wise and righteous living, a foundation of faith and values on which future generations can build. This deeper inheritance often matters more than the financial one, because it shapes the very character and trajectory of the generations that follow, passing down not merely resources, but the wisdom and values and example that enable those generations to build good lives of their own. The wisdom for living here is to adopt a generational vision, to think beyond your own lifetime, and to build a legacy, both material and, more importantly, in character, wisdom, and values that will bless those who come after you. This does not mean neglecting the present or living only for the future. It means lifting your vision beyond the merely immediate and personal to consider the enduring impact of your life on the generations that will follow. Build a good name that your children and grandchildren can inherit. Model a life of wisdom and integrity that will shape those who come after you. Pass down not only whatever material provision you can build, but the far more valuable inheritance of character, faith, and values. And in doing so, you will leave an inheritance to your children's children, casting your goodness forward into a future you will not see, blessing generations you may never meet with the legacy of a life well and wisely lived. Proverb 51. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. Proverbs 18:10. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous runneth into it and is safe. As we near the end of our journey through these 52 sayings, we come to one of the most comforting and secure images in all of the book. A picture of refuge and safety that has sustained countless people through the storms of life. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous runs into it and is safe. In the ancient world, a strong tower was a place of refuge, a fortified stronghold to which people would run in times of danger, where they would be safe from the threats that pursued them. And the proverb declares that the name of the Lord is exactly such a refuge, a strong tower into which the righteous can run and find safety from whatever threatens them. The image is rich and deeply comforting. When danger came in the ancient world, an approaching army, a raiding party, any threat to life and safety, people would run to the strong tower, the fortified stronghold, and inside its walls they would be safe, protected, secure against the threat outside. And the proverb applies this image to the name of the Lord, to God himself as known and called upon, declaring that he is exactly this kind of refuge for those who run to him. When the threats of life come, the fears, the dangers, the storms, the overwhelming circumstances that pursue and threaten us, there is a strong tower to run into, a refuge of safety, a stronghold where we can be secure. The name of the Lord is that tower, and the righteous, the proverb says, runs into it and is safe. Notice the action in the proverb. The righteous runs into it. The tower is available, but it must be entered. The refuge is there, but one must run to it. This is not a passive safety that comes upon us regardless of what we do, but a refuge we must actively enter, a tower we must run into. When the threats come, when the fears rise, when the dangers press in, the righteous do something. They run to the strong tower, they flee to the refuge, they actively seek the safety that God provides. And in that running, in that active seeking of refuge in God, they find safety. This teaches us what to do in the times of threat and fear that come to every life. Run to the tower. Do not merely stand exposed to the threat. Do not merely try to face it in your own strength, but run to the refuge. Flee to the stronghold. Seek your safety actively in the name of the Lord, who is a strong tower for all who run to him. The wisdom for living here is to know where your refuge is and to run to it in the times of threat and fear that inevitably come. Every life encounters storms, dangers, fears, and overwhelming circumstances that threaten and pursue us. And the proverb tells us that there is a refuge, a strong tower, a place of safety to which we can run. The name of the Lord, God himself as our stronghold and our refuge. So when the threats come, know where to run. Do not stand exposed. Do not rely only on your own strength, but run to the strong tower. Flee to the refuge that is always available to those who seek it. Run into the name of the Lord and find, as the righteous have found across all the generations, the safety and security of a strong tower that no threat can breach. This is one of the deepest comforts available to a human being. To know that whatever comes, there is a refuge, and that the righteous who run to it are safe. Proverb 52. Trust in the Lord and the culmination of wisdom. Proverbs 3:5-6. Returning to where we began, now understood more fully. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. We come now to the 52nd and final saying, and it is fitting that we return to where we began, to the great passage about trusting in the Lord with all your heart, because now, having journeyed through 51 other sayings, we can understand it more fully and see how it gathers up and crowns everything else we have learned. This passage stood near the beginning of our journey, and it stands now at the end, framing the whole, because it contains the deepest secret of the wisdom we have been pursuing. That all the wisdom of Proverbs finds its foundation and its culmination in trust in the God who is the source of all wisdom. Think back over the journey we have taken together through these 52 sayings. We have learned about the fear of the Lord as the beginning of knowledge, about guarding the heart, about the power of the tongue, about the value of wisdom above riches, about self-mastery and the ruling of our spirits, about seeking counsel, about the danger of pride and the honor of humility, about generosity and friendship and diligence and discretion, about the way of the just that shines more and more unto the perfect day. And all of it, every single saying, finds its foundation and its culmination in this: trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding, and in all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. Because all the wisdom we have gathered is not finally about our own cleverness or our own strength or our own ability to figure out life, but about aligning ourselves with the God who is the source of all wisdom, and trusting him to direct our paths. This is why the passage says to trust with all your heart and to lean not on your own understanding. Because the deepest wisdom is not the accumulation of your own understanding until you can navigate life entirely on your own. The deepest wisdom is the humility to recognize that your own understanding, however much wisdom you have gathered, is not enough, and to trust the God who sees what you cannot see and who can direct your paths in ways your own understanding never could. All 51 of the other sayings are precious, and each one rewires some dimension of how you make decisions and build your life. But they all rest on this foundation and rise to this culmination, that the truest wisdom is to trust the Lord with all your heart, to hold your own understanding humbly, and to acknowledge him in all your ways, trusting him to direct your paths. This is the wisdom that gathers up all the other wisdom, the trust that is the beginning and the end of everything the Book of Proverbs has been trying to teach. And so we end where we began, but changed, because now we understand more fully what it means. To trust in the Lord with all your heart is not to abandon the wisdom we have gathered, but to place all of that wisdom in its proper foundation and to crown it with its proper culmination. Make your plans wisely, guard your heart diligently, speak with a wholesome tongue, seek counsel, rule your spirit, walk in humility, give generously, choose your companions carefully, and do all the wise things these 52 sayings have taught. But do it all resting on the deepest wisdom of all. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, and in all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. This is the wisdom that will not only rewire how you make decisions, but will anchor your whole life in the God who is the source of every good thing, and who directs the paths of all who trust him with the fullness of their hearts. We have come to the end of our journey through these 52 sayings, one for every week of the year ahead of you. And my hope is that you will not leave them here in this single hearing, but that you will carry them with you, returning to them week by week, letting them work their way ever deeper into the way you think and decide and live. Because wisdom, as we have seen, is not information to be collected, but a way of living to be practiced. Not a single hearing, but a lifelong walking. And these 52 sayings, practiced over the weeks and months and years of your life, have the power to rewire quietly and permanently the way you make every decision and the way you build the entire architecture of your life. Before we part, let me speak to you once more, directly and from the heart. If these 52 sayings have stirred something in you, if even one of them has landed in a place where you needed it, reaching some decision you are facing, or some pattern you have been trapped in, or some truth you needed to hear, then I want to ask you to do one thing before you go, and it is the thing that matters most. Share this teaching with one person. Think right now of one specific person in your life who came to mind as you listened, someone who is facing a hard decision, someone who is trying to build something and needs wisdom to build it well, someone carrying a weight that one of these sayings might help them set down. You know who came to mind? Send this to them. It costs you nothing, and it takes only a moment, but it may reach them at exactly the moment they need it, becoming a quiet act of love toward one soul who needed these words as much as you did. That is the heart of what I am asking. Send this to the one person you are thinking of right now. And if you are able, subscribe as well, so that you are here for what comes next, because there is more wisdom to explore together, more journeys into the deep wells of Scripture, more teachings being prepared even now to help you build a life that stands. It is free, a single tap, and it keeps your seat among everyone gathered here. But the share is the heart of it. Send this to your one person. Before you go, I would love for you to do one more thing in the comments. Tell me which of these 52 sayings you most needed to hear today. Which one landed the deepest, spoke to your exact situation, named the very thing you have been wrestling with. Leave it below. Just the number or the saying itself, or a few words about why it reached you. And as you scroll, you will see the sayings that others most needed too. And you will realize that we are all here together, each of us reached by a different word at a different point of need, all of us walking the same road toward wisdom. And now, let me leave you with a blessing, spoken directly over you as we part. May the wisdom of these ancient words take root in the deep places of who you are, and may it grow there, quietly and steadily, until it reshapes the way you make every decision and build every part of your life. May you have the discernment to choose your path well, the self-mastery to rule your own spirit, the humility to seek counsel and receive correction, and the courage to walk in wisdom even when the way is hard. May you guard your heart, for out of it flow the issues of life. May your path be as the shining light that shines more and more into the perfect day, and may you trust in the Lord with all your heart, leaning not on your own understanding, acknowledging Him in all your ways, and finding, as you do, that He directs your paths toward a life more good and more wise and more full than you could have built on your own. Go in peace and go in wisdom, and may the God of all wisdom go with you this week and in all the weeks to come. Until next time.